Chapter 8:14. Yen Liang left in a daze. When he returned, he was scolded by the principal for not doing his job well. However, Tang Jing was not in the mood to care about Yen Liang. The difference in status between the two was like heaven and earth. He would rather cultivate in peace than deal with this kind of person. He used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb other people's energy to increase his own cultivation twice. This was a good thing but also a bad thing. He realized that he was relying too much on the sky-swallowing technique. This was not a good idea. If he continued to use this method to increase his cultivation, it would shake his foundation. The losses outweighed the gains. Therefore, he concentrated on cultivating and consolidating his cultivation. The next day the school leaders came to find him. Tang Jing closed the door and refused to see them. They seemed to want to send him back to school. Tang Jing snorted and was unmoved. The only people in Yenching University that he was reluctant to leave were his classmates and Professor Qi Shaowen. He was not familiar with the others, so naturally he had no feelings for them. As for the school leaders, after seeing what they did to Professor Qi, he did not have a good impression of them. The school leaders were rebuffed and left dejectedly. After wholeheartedly cultivating for a few days, Tang Jing's harvest was plentiful as he consolidated his cultivation. Moreover, his cultivation showed signs of reaching the next level. He believed that if he put in more effort he would definitely be able to reach the 5th grade of Jindan. After returning to the capital for a few days, he still had not gone to see Yi Dingdang. Coincidentally, he refined the 9 transformation soul return pill. When night fell, Yi Dingdang had already returned home from school. She saw Tang Jing standing downstairs and was pleasantly surprised like a swallow flying into his arms. "Why are you here?" "Because I missed you." "Humph, at least you have a conscience." During this period of time she really missed Tang Jing. After the intimate skin-to-skin contact, the relationship between the two broke through that barrier. Tang Jing's figure would often appear in Yi Dingdang's mind, so much so that she would occasionally laugh foolishly in class. "Come, let's go upstairs," Tang Jing said. Yi Dingdang shook her head. "No, let's kiss first." She raised her head and looked at him expectantly. Looking at the beautiful face that was so close to him, Tang Jing shook his head. She was different from other people. She was passionate and dared to love and hate. The other girls wouldn't ask him for a kiss in public. However, this feeling was really good. He lowered his head and kissed her. After tasting the forbidden fruit for the first time, Yi Dingdang was immediately aroused. She hooked her arms around his neck and responded to him passionately. Cough cough. There was a sudden cough. Yi Dingdang bounced back as if she had been electrocuted. She looked at the person in bewilderment. This voice was too familiar. It was actually her father, Yi Tianlei. Yi Tianlei looked at the two awkwardly. When did the two of them become so close? Tang Jing's skin was thick enough. His face didn't turn red and his heart didn't skip a beat. It was as if nothing had happened. He nodded at Yi Tianlei and calmly said, "Uncle Yi, you're back." Yi Tianlei looked at Tang Jing with a complicated expression. Tang Jing was the benefactor of the Ye family and was also his boss. Moreover, Feng Xinyang always wanted him to be her son-in-law. Thus, Tang Jing's identity was too complicated. Even if he bumped into their good thing he couldn't say anything. He faintly sighed and said, "You're here. I haven't come to see you in a long time. I just happened to be free today. Then let's go upstairs." After Yi Tianlei finished speaking he took the lead and walked in. Yi Dingdang fiercely glared at Tang Jing and complained in a voice as soft as a mosquito. "You only came to see me when you were free. You didn't come especially to see me." "How could that be? I came especially to see you." "Hang, at least you have a conscience," Yi Dingdang happily said. How could this be hidden from Yi Tianlei's ears? He helplessly shook his head and thought that his children and grandchildren had their own fortune. He couldn't care less. Moreover, this was a good thing that his wife was happy to see. As expected, Feng Xinyang saw the three of them enter together. Her face was about to bloom with a smile as she quickly welcomed Tang Jing in. Yi Dingdang saw her mother's appearance. She curled her lips and said, "Feng Xinyang, why do I feel that you treat Tang Jing better than you treat your daughter?" Feng Xinyang happily said, "Of course. Don't you see how outstanding the little handsome is? Not only is he handsome, he's also young and promising. If I don't treat this kind of young talent well, who else would I treat well?" "But I'm your daughter," Yi Dingdang argued. "I've already raised you for more than 10 years. I've long seen enough. Of course the little handsome is even more interesting." Feng Xinyang said. "Forget it. I've been defeated by you. Biased." Cough cough. Yi Tianlei dryly coughed twice and said, "Let the young people talk. Why are you interfering? Go and cook." Feng Xinyang coldly glared and said, Yi Tianlei, when did you command me? Yi Tianlei did not dare to contradict her. He embarrassedly smiled. How am I commanding you? Isn't this a suggestion? That's more like it. Feng Xinyang's face lit up with joy again. Little handsome, you and Ding Dang play for a while. Aunt Feng will immediately go and prepare the meal. Go to my room. Yi Ding Dang did not allow any explanation as she pulled Tang Jing into the room. Yi Tianlei wanted to stop her but was interrupted by Feng Xinyang. Why are you stopping me? How can you let the two of them be in the same room? You don't know what I just saw. Yi Tianlei anxiously said. What did you see? They were kissing. Yi Tianlei hesitated for a moment before saying. Feng Xinyang's eyes lit up and said, Wow, this girl has finally been enlightened. Not bad, she's very similar to this old mother's style. Yi Tianlei helplessly rolled his eyes and said, Is there a mother like you? Other mothers are strictly guarded, deeply afraid that their daughter will be at a disadvantage. You, on the other hand, can't wait to push your daughter away. Little Handsome is so outstanding. If other mothers met such a good son-in-law, I'm afraid they would be more powerful than me. If they were as stubborn as you, Little Handsome would have long been seduced away by other women. Where would there be a place for our daughter? You have to fight for your own happiness. Women are no exception. But she is after all a girl. She has to be reserved. Yi Tianlei's words had not yet finished when he was fiercely grabbed by Feng Xinyang's waist and said, You're saying that I wasn't reserved in the past? If I wanted to be reserved, where would there be a place for you? Yi Tianlei did not think that he would suffer such an unexpected calamity. He quickly begged for mercy. I didn't mean that. You misunderstood. I misunderstood? Then come to the kitchen and explain clearly. Otherwise, you won't have a share in tonight's dinner. Feng Xinyang's heroic spirit was high-spirited, valiant and heroic. Yi Tianlei was helpless as he was dragged to the kitchen to work as a laborer and did not have the chance to interfere with Tang Jing and Yi Ding Dang. The two people were already passionately entangled together. They rolled on the bed. Their limbs were entangled together. Their lips were tightly pressed together as they passionately kissed. Yi Ding Dang's breath was like orchids. Tang Jing's passion was like fire. Yi Ding Dang was wearing a pair of denim shorts. Tang Jing's slender legs fell into Yi Ding Dang's palms. Her skin was as smooth as silk and as white as jade. It made Tang Jing forget to go back. His other hand was not well behaved. It drilled into the t-shirt, attacking and conquering, bravely climbing to the peak. Don't, they are outside. Yi Ding Dang hurriedly grabbed his hand, trying to stop him. It's okay. The door is closed. You're not allowed to do that. You can only touch. Otherwise, I'll kick you off the bed. Yi Ding Dang took a step back. Can you bear to kick me? Tang Jing said shamelessly. Yi Ding Dang winked slyly. You can try. Tang Jing knew Yi Ding Dang's temper. He compromised. Then let's not try. I'll just touch. Yi Ding Dang was like a victorious general as she proudly raised her head. But in the next moment, she took a deep breath and tenderly said, Be gentle. Tang Jing used a bit of force and said, Do you still dare to kick me? I want to kick. Yi Ding Dang struggled and refused to admit defeat. Haha, little girl, you still don't want to admit defeat, right? Tang Jing said with a smirk. He used more force in his hand. The warmth and softness of his hand was refreshing and made his heart sway. I don't want to admit defeat. Yi Ding Dang bit her lips and grabbed with the back of her hand. Tang Jing sucked in a breath of cold air and cried out in alarm, Wah, are you trying to murder your husband? He looked down and saw that her small hands had actually slipped into his pants and grabbed his lifeline. Yi Ding Dang smirked. Now you know how powerful I am. Who wants to admit defeat? I admit defeat. Tang Jing hung his head dejectedly. You're murdering your husband. You're ruining your happiness for the rest of your life. Who said you're my husband? You're so thick-skinned and shameless. Stop fooling around. Otherwise you'll really break it. Besides, if you keep doing this, what if I can't control myself and take you on the spot? Then come at me. Yi Ding Dang deliberately pinched Tang Jing and winked teasingly. Tang Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why didn't I realize you were so naughty before? Even if you dare, I wouldn't dare. Humph, coward. You dare say I'm a coward? When there's no one around, see how I'll deal with you. Tang Jing threatened. Come at me. Who's afraid of who? Yi Ding Dang shrugged and didn't admit defeat. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Feng Xinyang shouted from outside. Come out and eat. Okay, coming. The two hurriedly got off the bed and tidied up their messy clothes. Yi Ding Dang's face was still a bit red. She glared fiercely at Tang Zheng before the two walked out. The four of them sat around the table. Feng Xinyang constantly urged Tang Zheng to eat more. She gave him food with incomparable enthusiasm. Yi Tianlei stuffed food into his mouth without tasting it. He glanced at his daughter from the corner of his eye and found that she was looking at Tang Zheng with love. He couldn't help but sigh. Her status in the family was getting worse day by day. She was practically like air. He couldn't help but feel a bit sour. Most fathers would have complex emotions. A grown woman can't be kept. It seems like this woman won't be kept for long. The meal was finished amidst laughter and chatting. After chatting for a while, Tang Zheng stood up and said his goodbyes. Yi Dingdang took the initiative to send him downstairs. In the darkness, the two hid behind a big tree to prevent others from seeing them. You've only been here for a while and you're already leaving. You really don't have a conscience. Yi Dingdang bitterly said. Chapter 8:15. When Yi Dingdang heard this, she heavily punched him and said, "What nonsense are you thinking about?" Tang Zheng did not allow her to explain as he pulled her hand and said while walking, "It would be bad if we were discovered here. There is a hotel nearby, so let's go to the hotel." Hooligan, a complete hooligan. Yi Dingdang did not refuse and allowed him to pull her into a nearby hotel. Bang. Just as the door was closed, Yi Dingdang cried out in alarm as she was picked up by the waist. "You are too impatient." Tang Zheng gasped for breath and said, "Who told you to provoke me at home? Let's see who wins and who loses." "Hang, do you think I'm afraid of you? Isn't there a saying that there are only tired cows but no plowed fields?" Yi Dingdang proudly said. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry as he slapped her butt and said, "Who taught you this?" "The people in the dorm said it. It seems like you have learned bad things from them. You're the worst. Then I'll show you how bad I am. Let's see if your field is better or if my cow is more powerful." Tang Zheng tyrannically said. Yi Dingdang hooked her finger and said, "Come, who's afraid of who?" After a long drought, Yi Dingdang tasted the sweetness of the fruit and became more familiar with it. Very quickly she became one with Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng felt a strong attractive force coming from below, making him feel as if his soul was about to leave his body. This. Tang Zheng was startled as he looked at her in disbelief. Yi Dingdang's face was full of spring as she charmingly asked, "Why aren't you moving? Do you feel anything strange?" "What's strange?" Yi Dingdang did not understand. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and suppressed his strange thoughts as he continued to gallop. Suddenly, that feeling came again as if his soul was about to leave his body. Moreover, his pure yang energy was flowing from below into Yi Dingdang's body. Originally, the two of them did not have this feeling the first time, but this time it was so strong that he was puzzled. "You are absorbing my pure yang energy," Tang Zheng said. Yi Dingdang's mind was not clear as she asked in a daze, "What pure yang energy?" Tang Zheng gave a rough explanation and said, "How did you absorb my pure yang energy?" In the past, the pure yang energy in his body had been mediated by absorbing pure yin energy. It was extremely difficult for the pure yang energy to leak out. Other than when Qin Shi Huang had absorbed his power, he had also absorbed the pure yang energy. Other than that, the pure yang energy had always been firmly rooted in his body. Yi Dingdang was also confused and said, "I also don't know." Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat as she shyly said, "However, every time we do this, my Jade Woman's Heart Sutra will automatically activate. Especially after we did it last time, my power increased by 2 levels. Your power has increased by 2 levels. Tang Zheng took a closer look and sure enough, her power had indeed increased by a lot. But his strength did not change last time. Why was this? Suddenly, his heart moved as he remembered a long time ago when Tian Chanzi occasionally mentioned something. Yi Dingdang cultivated the Jade Heart Sutra and would give him a pleasant surprise in the future. Could this be the pleasant surprise that Tian Chanzi mentioned? Yi Dingdang cultivated the Jade Heart Sutra and could actually absorb his pure yang energy. This was more effective than absorbing the pure yin energy from Yi Dingdang's body. Removing the firewood from under the cauldron, if the pure yang energy was absorbed, it would naturally reduce the danger of his body exploding. Tang Zheng did not know whether to laugh or cry. The heaven monk was truly cunning. He actually did not tell him, causing him to almost forget about it. Furthermore, the last time the two of them were having fun together, they did not have any strange feelings, so he forgot about it. Now it seems that Tian Chanzi's words were not false and gave him a big pleasant surprise. But whether or not this pure yang energy was harmful to Yi Dingdang was not certain. "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Tang Zheng asked with concern. Yi Dingdang punched him and said, "Rogue, after doing this you still ask me if I feel comfortable? She bit her lips and spat out 2 words, comfortable. Tang Jing knew that he had misunderstood and awkwardly explained, "That's not what I meant. I was asking if there was any problem with your body." Yi Dingdang finally understood his words and suspiciously looked at him, asking, "No, I just feel a warm feeling in my body, as if there is a warm current flowing through my entire body. Last time I didn't feel it that strongly, but this time I feel it even more strongly." Tang Jing guessed that this was definitely because of the pure yang energy. However, since she did not have any major problems, then there was no problem. It was just that the suction force was very long-lasting and Yi Dingdang did not feel it at all. This made it difficult for Tang Jing, and not long after, he was defeated. Yi Dingdang unhappily pouted and complained, "Why can't I? Did you do too many bad things outside? I heard my roommate say that men do too many bad things outside, that's why they can't do it." Tang Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Don't listen to your roommate's nonsense. It's not that I can't do it." He lamented in his heart and finally recalled the teasing expression in the depths of Tian Chanzi's eyes when he said that he would give him a pleasant surprise. Perhaps his so-called pleasant surprise was not only Yi Dingdang being able to absorb pure yang energy, but also the attractive force that made him throw away his armor. "Tian Chanzi, you are really bad. You want to see me make a fool of myself, right? I won't let you get your way." Tang Jing took a deep breath and said, "If you dare to say that I can't do it, then just wait for the storm to come." After he finished speaking, he threw himself onto Yi Dingdang's body. Tang Jing did not win one battle after another. In the end, his legs went soft and he ended the battle with Yi Dingdang's laughter. He lay on the bed exhausted. Yi Dingdang lay on his chest, the corners of her mouth raised into a sweet smile, and said, "What they said was true. There are only tired cows and no plowed fields. I'll squeeze you dry. Let's see if you can still be romantic in the future." Tang Jing wanted to cry but had no tears. How could this bullshit Jade Girl heart suture be so powerful? Jade Girl? It seemed more like a lustful woman. The two rested for a moment. Yi Dingdang was satisfied as she held onto Tang Jing's hand and walked out of the hotel. When they returned home, Yi Dingdang looked at his weak appearance and deliberately said, "How about we fight again tomorrow?" Tang Jing hurriedly waved his hand. "Killing the goose that lays the golden eggs is not a good thing. Are you scared now? Little guy, let's see if you dare to be naughty in the future. Be good and listen to me, do you understand?" Yi Dingdang patted his face and teased him with the tone of a big sister. Tang Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry. This time he fell into a big mess. The next time he met Tian Chanzi, he would definitely find him to settle the score. "You should go back quickly. Otherwise they will be worried," Tang Jing urged. "I'll let you go this time. You should go back too." Yi Dingdang took the initiative to kiss him and then happily went upstairs. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang were sitting in the living room. When they saw her enter, 2 pairs of eyes stared at her. Yi Dingdang guiltily looked at the two and said, "I'm going to sleep." Seeing their daughter enter the room, the husband and wife looked at each other. Just now, Tang Jing and Yi Dingdang had left for 2 to 3 hours. The husband and wife's hearts were filled with apprehension as they waited for a long time. "Do you think they?" Yi Tianlei nervously asked. Feng Xinyang recalled her daughter's appearance just now. She must have been nourished by the rain. She half-heartedly said, "It's a child's matter. Why do you care so much?" "Why wouldn't I care? Dingdang is my daughter." Seeing her husband's excited appearance, Feng Xinyang did not care at all and said, "Isn't this a good thing? Now that I've firmly grasped the little handsome brother, he won't be able to escape." Yi Tianlei fiercely grabbed a handful of hair and said in distress, "But she is my daughter. A grown daughter cannot be kept. I'm going to lose her." It was said that a daughter was a father's lover in his previous life. Seeing his daughter grow up and fall into the arms of another man, Yi Tianlei's heart was indeed uncomfortable and full of jealousy. In the next few days, Tang Jing's body was peaceful. He had absorbed a lot of pure yang energy. Yin and yang were in harmony and his skills were becoming more and more profound. He sat cross-legged in the room and operated his mysterious art. The ancient clear heaven scroll's power flowed along his meridians and flowed through his limbs and bones. The dragon god's secret art also played its role. His body flickered with a golden light and occasionally dragon scales would appear on his skin. The true qi in his body steadily rose. This time, it was all from his own cultivation and not from other people's bodies. Therefore the feeling was particularly different. Whoosh! Suddenly the golden light on his body surged and the 3-clawed golden dragon broke through his head. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it soared into the air and swam around the room. Strong winds blew and the golden light was dazzling. His aura steadily rose, especially the majestic dragon's aura that caused the atmosphere in the room to change. If a person stood in front of him, they would definitely kneel down. He was like an emperor. Especially with the golden dragon circling around him, the dragon's aura was grand. It made people tremble in fear and involuntarily want to submit to him. Of course, this was only for ordinary people or people with weak cultivation. If it was a strong person, they would naturally be able to resist this kind of power. Unknowingly, the golden light on the golden dragon's body became brighter and brighter. A ball of golden light gathered at its abdomen and a dragon claw stretched out from the golden light. The fourth dragon claw. Although Tang Zheng's eyes were closed, he could clearly feel everything. When he saw the birth of the fourth dragon claw, he was overjoyed. This meant that the dragon god's secret art had reached the fourth layer and he could ascend to the fourth floor of Langya Pavilion. There were countless treasures hidden in Langya Pavilion. If he could ascend to the fourth floor, what kind of treasures would he find? This made him extremely excited and unable to calm down. The fourth dragon claw was still growing. The shining golden dragon scales were especially dazzling. A dragon's roar reverberated in the room. All the furniture was instantly shattered and turned into fine powder. The Empyrean fairy jumped up from the sofa in shock and rushed to Tang Zheng's door like lightning. The dragon's roar was even clearer. This dragon's roar did not spread too far, but with her hearing she naturally heard it clearly. Dragon's roar. Her expression changed. What's going on? She could not help but recall the scene in the tomb. Tang Zheng seemed to be about to transform into a dragon. Although he did not explain afterwards, she was still very curious. Could it be that the golden dragon had appeared again? Chapter 8:16. The Empyrean fairy suppressed her curiosity and stood at the door like a puppet. She stared at the door as if she wanted to see through it. The fourth claw of the golden dragon had completely grown out. Tang Zheng had broken through to the fourth stage of the dragon god technique. The four-clawed golden dragon shone with a golden light. The dragon vein running through the dragon's body was particularly clear. The ninth main meridian in Tang Zheng's body was also shining brightly and complementing the dragon vein. Back then, Tang Zheng had absorbed the dragon vein of the Qinling Mountains and merged it with his ninth main meridian. The dragon vein was the ninth main meridian that connected him and the golden dragon. The golden dragon opened its mouth and roared. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it dove toward Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was bathed in golden light. The golden dragon swelled and rushed into the dragon seal. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it circled around for a while. Then it calmed down and circled around in the dragon roar. The golden light dissipated and Tang Zheng returned to normal. However, there was an occasional flash of golden light in his eyes that had a captivating charm. He channeled his energy slightly and the shocking dragon's might was completely withdrawn. He returned to the appearance of an ordinary young man. Phew. He heaved a heavy sigh. The scene just now was truly shocking, causing his heart to beat wildly. The higher the level of the dragon god technique, the more unexpected the scene of each breakthrough would be. 7. Now that the dragon god technique has reached the fourth stage, I can enter the fourth floor of the Langya Pavilion. He was extremely excited. What exactly was hidden on the fourth floor of the Langya Pavilion? Dong dong. The sound of knocking on the door interrupted his thoughts. The Empyrean fairy had already discovered that the aura in the room had disappeared, so she knocked on the door. Tang Zheng, may I come in? Please come in. Tang Zheng stood up. The Empyrean fairy pushed the door open and stared at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. It was as if she wanted to see through him, but strangely, his cultivation did not change much. What was that dragon roar just now? The Empyrean fairy asked in a deep voice. I heard a dragon roar just now. Tang Zheng nodded and admitted, yes. You summoned the golden dragon again? Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment. I didn't summon it. It ran out on its own when I was cultivating. The Empyrean fairy had seen the golden dragon before, and she had seen it absorb the dragon vein of the Qinling Mountains. Therefore there was no need to hide it. What martial art do you practice? The Empyrean fairy asked directly. The dragon god art was a divine art of the dragon clan. He could pass it on to Lu Qingmei, but he didn't dare to tell the Empyrean fairy. Sorry, I can't tell you this, Tang Zheng replied. The Empyrean fairy raised her eyebrows. She did not expect Tang Zheng to reject her so cleanly. She looked at him with displeasure. Tang Zheng was helpless. He looked at her and refused to budge. After a long time, the Empyrean fairy knew that she could not force Tang Zheng to compromise, so she asked, I haven't asked you before. Since you practice this mysterious martial art, You must have a close relationship with the Dragon Clan. Do you know what the Dragon Clan represents? What does the Dragon Clan represent? Tang Jing was confused. Isn't the Dragon Clan the Dragon Clan? The Empyrean fairy looked at him like she was looking at an idiot. You practice the Dragon Clan's martial art, but you don't know what the Dragon Clan represents? In fact, the Empyrean fairy was just casually asking as a test. She didn't expect to get such an answer. It was truly out of her expectations. Moreover, Tang Jing did not look like he was lying. The Dragon Clan is not a creature of our world. What? Since you know about the big world and the small world, you should know that we are not the only ones in the great wide world. The Dragon Clan is not a creature of our world, but a creature of another world. It's just that a small part of them came to our world at some point in time. Because of their powerful and majestic strength, they were treated as spiritual totems and passed down generation after generation. Tang Jing was shocked. Even the five-clawed golden dragon did not tell him about this. Perhaps ordinary cultivators were not aware of this, so Tian Chanzi did not mention it. The Empyrean fairy's identity was mysterious, so she knew the secrets. Where did the Dragon Clan come from? Tang Jing asked curiously. The Empyrean fairy took a deep breath and seemed to be lost in her memories. After a long time she said slowly, I don't know where they come from, but there are rumors that it's a world of dragons. The strong are everywhere and the weak can't survive. Tang Jing could not help but imagine for a moment. The five-clawed golden dragon's strength was already frightening, not to mention the Dragon Clan that was even stronger. What kind of world would it be? In any case, with Tang Jing's brain, he could not imagine what kind of world it was for the time being. Then why did the Dragon Clan come to our world? Tang Jing asked again. I don't know. You practice the Dragon Clan's cultivation method, so I wanted to ask you. The Empyrean fairy said. Tang Jing smiled bitterly. How would I know? If you don't know, then where did your Dragon Clan's cultivation method come from? The Empyrean fairy did not give up and asked. It was a coincidence. Tang Jing said perfunctorily. The Empyrean fairy coldly snorted. She knew that it was useless to ask, so she simply stopped asking. She said meaningfully, the Dragon Clan is very involved. If others know that you practice the Dragon Clan's cultivation method, then you will become a delicious cake. What do you mean? Tang Jing's head trembled. The Dragon Clan is the spiritual totem of this world. You have also experienced Qin Shi Huang's crazy worship of the Dragon Clan. So, if others know that you not only have a golden dragon, but also a Dragon Clan's cultivation method, what do you think they will do? The Empyrean fairy looked at him with a smile and asked. Tang Jing's heart trembled. It seemed that he had become Tang Seng's meat, and everyone wanted to take a bite. He had a lingering fear. Fortunately, he stopped Lu Qingmei from practicing the Dragon God's cultivation method in time and changed it to another cultivation method. Otherwise, with her strength, it would be very dangerous for her to be targeted by others. Moreover, he could not reveal the secret of the Dragon God's cultivation method in front of others. As for the golden dragon and the dragon seal, unless it was absolutely necessary, he absolutely could not let it appear. When the five-clawed golden dragon passed on the Dragon God's cultivation method to me, it actually did not remind me of this point. I almost caused a disaster. He could not help but curse in his heart. The Empyrean fairy saw his expression change and said, So, you should take care of yourself. If you want to tell me about your cultivation method at any time, maybe I will remember some things about the Dragon Clan. Tang Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry. It was obvious that the Empyrean fairy did not finish her words. This was a trick up her sleeve, just like how he also kept a trick up his sleeve and did not tell her everything. The Empyrean fairy left in disappointment. Tang Jing closed the door again and silently circulated his cultivation method, preparing to enter the fourth floor of the Langya Pavilion in one go. The Langya Pavilion had a total of 18 floors, and the Dragon God's cultivation method had 9 layers. Every time he broke through a layer, he would be able to ascend to the 9th floor of the Langya Pavilion. However, there were still 9 floors left in the Langya Pavilion. He was very curious about what was on the top floor, but the five-clawed golden dragon did not mention anything, so he could not guess. Langya Pavilion. The 3 words floated on the horizontal board above his head. Tang Jing walked into the Langya Pavilion. Dong dong dong. He directly crossed the steps and directly arrived at the steps leading to the 4th floor. He took a deep breath, raised his foot and stepped onto the first step. Nothing happened. Only then did the corners of his mouth overflow with a smile, and he walked up the steps. He reached the 4th floor. When his foot landed on the floor of the 4th floor, the scene in front of him shocked him. When he looked back, the steps leading up had disappeared. He looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. Everything was so familiar. The blackboard, the desks, the classroom, and countless students who were immersed in their studies. Wasn't this the classroom in his high school? He looked around. It was indeed that classroom. He could not be more familiar with it. He spent more than 2 years of his high school life in this classroom. It was an unforgettable time. He fell from the top genius of the school to the bottom of the valley. He became the target of ridicule and even bullying. Many people, from teachers to students, laughed at him. It was a dark period of history. The pressure he endured was unimaginable to ordinary people. On one hand, there was the kind expectations of his grandfather, and on the other hand, there was the contemptuous and mocking gaze. It made him feel as if he was in the fire of hell. Tang Zheng, are you daydreaming again? Do you still think you're the top genius of the school? You're affecting other students' studies. You're a rat's poop, spoiling the pot of soup in our class. A piece of chalk hit his head. The familiar voice of the head teacher, Wuxia Chronicles, sneered. Her words were sharp, and she mercilessly mocked and ridiculed him. Tang Zheng suddenly raised his head and saw the familiar and hateful face of the old witch. A wave of anger rushed to his head. What right do you have to criticize me? Is this how you should be as a teacher? He was about to refute, but a series of ridicule followed one after another. He saw that the people around him were pointing at him and laughing non-stop. Tang Zheng, you're a pauper. What right do you have to sit with us? You'll be a pauper your whole life. You should go pick up trash with your stinky grandfather. How dare you sit in this bright and clean classroom? Get lost, the garbage dump is where you belong. Get lost, the garbage dump is where you belong. The others laughed and echoed. They directly pushed Tang Zheng, trying to push him out of the classroom. The old witch also came in front of him. That evil face of hers was laughing and scolding. Every word was like a knife stabbing into his heart. Tang Zheng's face and ears were red. He was panting and his murderous aura surged. He hysterically roared, I'm going to kill you all. Aha, you still want to kill us? You're just a pauper with nothing. We can kill you in minutes. You still want to kill us? Keep dreaming. The crowd mocked. Tang Zheng clenched his fists. His veins were exposed and his eyes flashed with a golden light. With a schwa sound, the war spirit sword appeared in his hand. However, the others were not afraid of him. They continued to provoke him with words as if they were not afraid of death at all. Chapter 8:17. The sword chi of war spirit was like a rainbow as it fell on the heads of the crowd. How could these people be a match for war spirit? They would definitely be smashed into pieces and turn into a rain of blood. Tang Zheng. Suddenly, a delicate voice came from the crowd, and a graceful figure squeezed out with difficulty, standing gracefully in front of him. Tang Zheng, you are a good person. You can't hurt them. War spirit hung above her head, but she was not afraid at all. She said, Tang Zheng, I believe that you won't do such a thing. We are all classmates. Although these people are annoying, you can't put yourself in a desperate situation because of them. Killing them is useless. We have to be strong ourselves. I believe that you will become very strong and once again proudly stand in front of them. Tang Zheng stared at this person without blinking. Fang Shishir. The concern on her face was so real that it touched his heart. His heartstrings trembled as he said, They are all scolding me and insulting me. I hate them. In this world there are people who slander me, bully me, humiliate me, laugh at me, look down on me, scold me, lie to me. What should I do? You just have to endure them, let them, avoid them, tolerate them, respect them, and ignore them. After a few more years, look at them. Fang Shishir advised earnestly. Compared to you, these people are like fireflies compared to the sun and moon. There is no comparison at all. You can't sacrifice yourself for them. It's not worth it. Tang Zheng's heartstrings trembled, and his gaze also changed. These words seemed to have a magical power, and more importantly, there was not the slightest trace of disdain or ridicule between her brows. It was completely from the bottom of her heart. His nature was not bad. After being exposed by her, it was as if a bucket of ice water was poured over his head. His anger went down the drain. Looking at those ugly faces, they could not provoke his anger at all. These people had become insignificant, like passing clouds. With a wave of his hand, they disappeared into thin air. Fang Shishir looked at him and Wanner smiled. Her figure gradually faded, and in an instant she disappeared with the others. Tang Zheng was suddenly startled, as if he had just woken up from a dream. He looked around, but there was no classroom. Everything just now was really a golden millet dream. Although it was real, it was particularly distant. He still had a lingering fear. He knew that he was in great danger just now. He was afraid that it was the work of the legendary inner demons. If Fang Shishir hadn't appeared in time to stop him, not only would he have killed those people, but he would also have fallen into the devil's path and suffered Qigong deviation. In the past, he had only heard of people going berserk while practicing martial arts. He had never thought that it would be so close to him. If he went berserk, then he would really be ruined. He looked at the fourth floor. Perhaps the dream just now was caused by the fourth floor. What was so special about this floor? This floor was completely different from the other floors. There were no bookshelves or anything like that. It was completely empty. There was only a huge mirror placed in the middle of the room. It was as tall as a person. Tang Jing carefully walked in front of the mirror. He could clearly see himself in the mirror, but he was shocked by his own reflection. His appearance in the mirror was naturally the same as his actual appearance, but there were wisps of black smoke rising from his body. What's going on? He was shocked. The inner demons have been destroyed. The devil's power has left the body and turned into ashes. A line of words suddenly appeared on the mirror, firmly attracting Tang Jing's attention. He suddenly realized that the wisps of black smoke were the devil's power. Humans have inner demons. If they can't defeat the inner demons, then they will be controlled by the inner demons. They will fall into the devil's path and become bloodthirsty. Another line of words appeared, as if to answer Tang Jing's question. The appearance of the devil's power leaving the body could only be seen in the mirror. It couldn't be seen by looking down. This was very mysterious, and Tang Jing couldn't take his eyes off the mirror. The wisps of black smoke became fainter and fainter, and finally disappeared completely. Eliminate the devil and protect the Tao. The Exorcist Realm. The Exorcist Mirror. Tang Jing's eyes lit up. Could it be that this mirror was called the Exorcist Mirror, and that the illusion just now was caused by the Exorcist Realm? Moreover, it happened without warning, making it impossible to guard against. It could pry into the most fundamental part of a person's heart. Tang Jing recalled that scene. Obviously, those years of suffering in school had left an indelible impression in his heart. He thought that he had forgotten, but he didn't expect that it would be imprinted in the depths of his heart and become the inner demons. The Exorcist Mirror evoked the inner demons, and the murderous intent in his heart surged, almost causing him to go berserk. All of this was thanks to Fang Shishir. Her kindness and beauty had left a mark in his heart back then. Therefore, even if the inner demons acted up, Fang Shishir's usual kindness had triggered the kindness in Tang Jing's heart. Although he was angry in the end, there was still kindness in his heart. He was also a kind person. I must thank her properly when I get out. He focused his attention on the Exorcist Mirror again. There was no difference between his reflection in the mirror and an ordinary mirror. I thought that there would be some more powerful secret on the fourth floor, but I didn't expect that there would only be a mirror. How disappointing. He shook his head and searched everywhere but found nothing. He didn't know how rare the Exorcist Mirror was. The fact that it was carefully stored in Langya Pavilion was enough to show how extraordinary the Exorcist Mirror was. Once the inner demons in a person's body were expelled, cultivation would be twice as effective with half the effort, and there would be no need to worry about going berserk. Going berserk was a problem that many people with high cultivation had to face. If one's cultivation was low, the inner demons would not cause trouble. The higher one's cultivation was, the more likely the inner demons would act up. Without the inner demons causing trouble, Tang Jing could cultivate smoothly, and his cultivation speed was even faster than before. However, he didn't know this, so he underestimated the power of the Exorcist Mirror. However, he wasn't in a hurry to leave Langya Pavilion. Cultivating in Langya Pavilion was twice as effective with half the effort, so he certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. When he channeled his power, he immediately noticed something strange. In the past, when he channeled his vital qi, he would occasionally feel sluggish, but now it was unimpeded, like a river flowing through a riverbed. It was extremely smooth. Could it be because I've gotten rid of my inner demon? His heart stirred and he immediately thought of this. The vital qi in his body was almost accumulated. Now that the inner demons were no longer causing trouble, his vital qi soared, and the spiritual energy in Langya Pavilion was absorbed into his body in the blink of an eye. Somehow, he had a feeling that his cultivation seemed to have reached the bottleneck of a breakthrough. In order to do it in one go, he took out the crystal stone that the King of Sweden had given him. Crystal stones were of a higher level than spirit stones. They contained a large amount of spiritual energy from heaven and earth, and were rare treasures for cultivators. The King of Sweden had given him one, and the other was for Tian Chanzi. He took out his own crystal stone, held it in the palm of his hand and channeled his power. Spiritual energy flowed into his body continuously, and his vital qi rose steadily. Whoosh! His whole body shone brightly, and a flame appeared on top of his head. It was a third-grade vital fire. The flame burned fiercely and the flame jumped, its color becoming darker and darker. Suddenly the flame rose high and Tang Zheng's body made a thunderous sound. The light outside his body was instantly restrained, and the vital fire also entered the top of his head. In his 8 extraordinary meridians, his vital qi was like a torrential flood, flowing continuously, and finally flowing into the golden elixir. The golden elixir shone brightly, illuminating the entire Dantian. The golden elixir grew little by little. When the vital qi subsided, the golden elixir was actually one size bigger, and became the size of a ping-pong ball. Tang Jing suddenly opened his eyes, and a dazzling golden light flashed. He couldn't help but exclaim, "5th grade golden elixir, 4th grade vital fire." He opened his palm, and a darker flame immediately burned in his palm. It didn't make a sound, but the power it contained was unquestionable. 4th grade vital fire will definitely be more effective when refining pills, but I don't know which one is stronger, this 4th grade vital fire or Xiao Bai's fire. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. Tang Jing was familiar with it and knew that it was time. As expected, in the blink of an eye, he left Langya Pavilion and returned to his room. He secretly checked his body and found that his vital qi was becoming more condensed, and more vital qi was flowing out of his golden elixir. It was flowing continuously. He couldn't help but smile and said, "Although I relied on the sky-swallowing skill to absorb other people's power and increase my cultivation by 2 levels, this time I broke through with my own efforts. This is enough to show that I've consolidated my previous gains and offset the side effects of the sky-swallowing skill." He walked out of the room and the Empyrean fairy's eyes immediately locked onto him. At once, her eyes almost popped out and she exclaimed, How did your cultivation increase again?" Previously, when she entered the room to see Tang Zheng, his cultivation didn't change much. How long had it been? In just a few hours he had advanced by leaps and bounds. Wasn't this cultivation speed a bit too fast? Tang Zheng nodded slightly at the Empyrean fairy and said, "Is it very surprising to raise your cultivation?" The Empyrean maiden was so angry that she rolled her eyes at his calm tone and attitude. If this was not surprising, then what was? "Young Master Tang, are you in there?" Suddenly, a person rushed in from outside like a raging inferno. Tang Jing looked at the person who came and asked curiously, "Young Master Yen, why are you here?" The person who came was Yen Lu Yun. When he saw Tang Jing, he pulled him back and said, "Quickly come back with me. The old man is looking for you. He said that there's something very important." Tang Jing was confused. What was the matter with Yen Padian gathering so many people? However, since the other party was so anxious, it must be a big matter. Thus he did not delay and said, "Then let's go. Fu Yao, tell the others that I'm going out for a while." The Empyrean fairy looked at his departing figure with a complicated expression. She couldn't help but feel jealous in the depths of her eyes. She was also a cultivation genius that many people envied. In fact, her background was extremely secretive and her background was extremely great. Therefore she rarely envied others, let alone being jealous. However, during this period of time she had been struck by Tang Jing time and time again. Her self-confidence had almost been destroyed, and she was even a little jealous of him. Chapter 8:18. When Yen Padian saw Tang Jing, he quickly walked over to welcome him. "Tang Jing, please come in, you're finally here." Tang Jing looked at him strangely. Why would he, who was always calm and collected, lose his composure like this? He asked, "What happened?" "I just received news that someone wants to take revenge on you." "Revenge?" Tang Jing frowned. "Who wants to take revenge on me?" "The news of you killing the Sword God's disciple Jian Shisan has already spread. The Sword God has already entered the capital and wants to take revenge on you." Yen Padian said worriedly. "The Sword God has entered the capital?" Tang Jing was truly shocked. Back then he had met the Sword God in the snowy mountains in the northeast, and he still remembered it clearly. If not for the help of the 4 symbols Venerable and the Sword Spirit, he probably wouldn't have been able to walk out of that sky cavern. "Yes, the Sword God is here for you. I just received this news, so I quickly called you over to discuss countermeasures," Yen Padian said anxiously. Tang Jing frowned and said, "Soldiers come to block, water comes to cover the earth. Since the Sword God is here, then dodging is definitely not possible." In the capital, Tang Jing was not afraid of the Sword God. After all, other than his own strength, there was also the Empyrean fairy, a powerful external aid. If the sword god wanted to kill him, it would not be an easy task. Seeing that Tang Zheng was not in a hurry at all, Yan Padian said anxiously, I am even more anxious than you. Why are you still so calm and collected, as if this matter has nothing to do with you? Although Yan Padian was also a Grandmaster stage expert, he knew that compared to the sword god, he had no chance of winning. Adding to the thunderous reputation of the sword god, he would naturally be shocked in his heart. Tang Jing smiled faintly, the sword god is also a human, I have already fought with him, he is not invincible, so there is no need to worry too much. Yan Padian didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, this is truly the case of the emperor not being anxious, the eunuch is anxious. Tang Zheng was moved and said, thank you Yan family head for your concern. This news is also very important to me. Otherwise, if I didn't make any preparations before encountering the sword deity, I'm afraid I would be in great danger. Yan Potion's heart relaxed. Tang Zheng's gratitude had not caused his work to be in vain. Although, after Yan Qingyi returned from the northwest, she had once told him about the new prophecy that she had seen, and that the Messiah seemed to be a misunderstanding. However, Yan Padian still thought highly of Tang Zheng and did his best to help him. The two of them had truly become allies in a trench. Then how are you going to prepare? Yan Padian asked curiously. This matter was of great importance, he had no choice but to ask. The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into a mysterious smile as he said, the Song family has mobilized so many people and even invited the sword deity. They will definitely make a big fuss and let everyone watch a good show to see the strength of the Song family. Furthermore, I'm afraid that he has already investigated my background in the capital, so I think that they will take the initiative to attack. You said that they might attack your residence? Yan Padian asked with furrowed brows. Tang Jing nodded his head, it's not that it should be but that it's a certainty. This time the Song family will definitely take over the sword god's hand and get rid of me. Of course they will go and kill me, and it will be even more intimidating, causing all the powers in the capital to fear the Song family in the future. Yan Padian pondered for a while, then nodded his head, your analysis makes sense. But there are so many women in your family. If they get hurt that won't be good. In Yan Potion's eyes, Tang Zheng's romantic affairs were not worth mentioning at all. Which successful man did not have these things? The aristocratic families were already used to it. On the contrary, this was a manifestation of strength. Only the most powerful man would attract the favor of so many women. Tang Zheng recalled the few people in his family, and the corner of his mouth revealed a sweet smile. He shook his head and said, there's no need to worry about them. This time I just happened to borrow the sword god to let them truly see the true face of this world. There were a few women in the family who had lived a good life since they were young and had never experienced any great storms. Tang Zheng had always tried his best to protect them, but in this world and because of their identities, they would eventually face all kinds of dangers. It was better to let them adapt in advance so that when they encountered danger in the future, they would not be flustered and would not know how to deal with it. Although this was somewhat cruel, it was still much better than being at a loss when facing danger in the future and causing irreparable and serious consequences. Seeing that Tang Zheng had already made up his mind, Yan Padian nodded his head in relief and said, our Yan family will help you fight against the enemies. Tang Zheng did not reject his good intentions and expressed his gratitude. The next day Tang Zheng woke up and prepared breakfast for everyone. When everyone was gathered at the table, Tang Zheng said, I have something to announce. I hope that everyone will stay at home today because someone will come. Someone? Who's coming? Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously, you will know when the time comes but be mentally prepared, I am afraid this day will not be that easy. When the time comes don't be afraid, I will take care of everything. Seeing Tang Zheng acting mysteriously as if there was danger involved, everyone had different reactions. Empyrean Fairy was calm and collected, as if it had nothing to do with her. Wuyu was eager to give it a try. His eyes lit up as if he couldn't wait to fight immediately. Fang Shishir had experienced the matters of the Rockefeller family, so she could be considered to have some experience. She was looking forward to it because this was Tang Zheng's life. She had long wanted to integrate into it and help him. Lu Qingmei had never experienced these things before, so she was at a loss. Mu Hongyan seemed to have thought of something and was a little worried. Back then, when she was with her late husband, she was very worried about this kind of moment, which often meant that there were many unpredictable risks. Although he always comforted her and said that it was fine, the worry in the depths of his eyes could not escape her eyes. But at this moment Tang Zheng was indeed calm and collected, but she did not see any worry in the depths of his eyes, as if he was not worried at all. She could not help but compare Tang Zheng with her late husband. Although her late husband was a descendant of an aristocratic family, with a prominent status and countless people envied him, but compared to Tang Zheng, it seemed that her late husband was overshadowed, and Tang Zheng was like the blazing sun in the sky, extremely dazzling. Everyone finished their breakfast with different thoughts, and then sat in the living room or in the garden, chatting and drinking tea, quietly waiting for everything to come. Tang Zheng blended in with everyone, a little green in the midst of 100 flowers, but it was also a happy and harmonious atmosphere. Everyone had been together for such a long time that they were completely harmonious. The initial feeling of unfamiliarity had also been eliminated. Therefore, one could only hear the occasional laughter and beautiful faces. This was definitely a picture that made one's heart beat faster. Although there was no information that indicated that the enemy would come today, Tang Zheng believed that the enemy would definitely not wait any longer. They would be impatient to show their strength in an attempt to regain their lost face. Close to noon, a group of people appeared outside the villa as expected. Although this villa was not very far from Yenching University, it was very quiet, and it was extremely difficult for ordinary people to come here, so when so many people suddenly appeared here, it did not attract any attention. The composition of this group was very complicated. There were old people in their old age, middle-aged people in the prime of their lives, and there were also youths full of vigor. The three generations of old, middle-aged, and young were very harmonious. Moreover, most of the people in this group were very good-looking. Those middle-aged men in the prime of their lives were casually pulled out, and they were also called uncles by infatuated girls. Not only were they handsome, but they also had an extraordinary temperament and style. As for the young man, it was even more so. His handsome face and beautiful face definitely covered many of the popular little fresh meat and female stars. Tang Zheng stood at the door facing the sun and smiled at this group of people. He smacked his lips and said, "Hee, everyone is really here." The Song Yi and Chu families were all here. Among them, the Song family was Song Jianan, Song Hanjun, Song Yu, and other people in the Song family that he did not know. The Ye family's lineup could not be underestimated. Yi Xuanji, Yi Tianming, Yi Ku, and even Yi Meiyu were among them. Yi Meiyu had already established a marriage contract with Song Yu, so it was not strange for her to be present. The Chu family had already declined, and it was obvious that there were fewer experts, only Chu Mingshen and Chu Xiaofeng. The Chu family had long been following the lead of the Song family, so of course they would not be absent from such an important place. Of course, the most eye-catching person was the sword god who was standing in front of the group. He stood proudly like a divine sword that was inserted into the earth, causing people to respect him. The sword god's gaze was sharp, like a sharp sword, as he stared at Tang Zheng. Last time he let Tang Zheng slip away and even took away the sword spirit. He had always felt regret, and it was even more of a humiliation. Who would have thought that before this matter was settled, Tang Zheng would actually kill his beloved disciple Jian Shisan. Jian Shisan was the most talented of his three disciples, and he had always placed high hopes on him. To die so unexpectedly, and at the hands of an old opponent, the sword god's mood could be imagined. But when the sword god saw Tang Zheng again, he was shocked. Although Tang Zheng had deliberately restrained himself, the aura that he unintentionally emitted still could not escape his golden eyes. What exactly happened to this brat? How did his strength increase so quickly? The sword god had seen countless geniuses in his life, but none of them could be compared to Tang Zheng, even he himself could not. His talent was envied by the world, especially his achievements in the way of the sword. Ordinary people would find it difficult to catch up to him, but he knew that compared to Tang Zheng, he was still slightly inferior. The others saw the two of them looking at each other from afar. If they knew what the sword god was thinking, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. Tang Zheng lifted his foot, and with just a small step, he actually arrived at the entrance of the courtyard. The power of the shrinking ground into an inch technique could be seen at a glance. Many experts only took a glance and their expressions changed slightly. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a faint smile and said, "With such a large force, it seems like you won't stop until you kill me. Tang Zheng, you should have died a long time ago. Back then, when you first arrived in the capital, I should have killed you. There wouldn't have been so many things to do after that." Chu Xiaofeng jumped out and complained fiercely. Tang Zheng glanced at him indifferently and said, "Since when is it your turn to speak here? The Chu family has indeed declined and there are no rules at all." Chu Xiaofeng's face immediately flushed red, and he panted like an ox, unable to speak. Tang Zheng did not put him in his eyes at all, and turned to the sword god and asked, "You are here to denounce me for the death of Jian Shisan, Then do you know the true cause of Jian Shisan's death? The moment these words were spoken, the expressions of the Song family members changed, because there was a detail that could not be revealed to outsiders. Chapter 8:19. Song Yu impatiently took a step forward and said, Tang Jing, even at death's door you still want to talk nonsense. Master, you must not listen to his nonsense. Sword God's face was gloomy as he declined to comment. Tang Jing laughed in ridicule. Song Yu, why are you so nervous? Could it be that you have a guilty conscience and are afraid that I will see through your disguise? Song Yu's face flushed red as she said with a guilty conscience, I'm just spouting nonsense. How could I have a guilty conscience? Is that so? Since you don't have a guilty conscience, then why are you so afraid that I will tell you the truth? Tang Jing asked with a smile. This smile caused Song Yu's heart to turn cold as she stammered, Who has the time to listen to your nonsense? Sword God suspiciously looked at Song Yu and then looked at Tang Jing and said, There's no harm in listening. I want to see what ugly things you can say. If Song Yu did not obstruct him like this, then perhaps Sword God would not have too much interest. But looking at Song Yu's appearance, he was instead a little interested in listening to Tang Jing's words. Song Yu was suddenly startled as she did not know what to do. Tang Jing glanced at Song Yu in ridicule and said, Jian Shisan is indeed worthy of being Sword God's disciple. His sword arts are exceptional and his cultivation is also very profound. It's a pity that he was used as a spear by others. That day when I killed my way into the Song family, the main members of the Song family fled in a sorry state and became cowards. Only Jian Shisan alone with his sword stood out bravely. After a fierce battle with me he was no match for me and was captured alive. I did not kill him but he committed suicide. At that time, Jian Shisan resolutely chose to commit suicide in order to protect the information about the Azure Dragon Hall in his brain. This kind of resolute attitude was truly worthy of respect. An ordinary person definitely wouldn't have such boldness and courage. After Tang Jing finished speaking, the faces of the Song family members suddenly changed. The Sword God's face became more and more gloomy, and he looked at the Song family rather unkindly. This was very different from the news that the Song family had told them. In the end, who was right and who was wrong? For a moment, it was hard for him to distinguish. But there was no doubt that there was something fishy going on. Song Jianan finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He stepped forward and reprimanded, Tang Jing, do you think you can fool the Sword God with your lies? You underestimate the Sword God too much. Everyone knows that your words are all lies. Whether it's a lie or not, wouldn't it be clear if we asked the others who were present at the time? Of course, I know that the closest members of the Song family are definitely in cahoots with you and won't tell the truth. However, there are so many other servants and there will definitely be some who are upright among them. Naturally they will tell the truth. Song Jianan said in his heart that it was really a close call. Fortunately, he was wise and heroic at that time and made a prompt decision to get rid of those servants. The dead tell no tales. In this way, Tang Jing's words had no evidence, and naturally did not have much credibility. Song Jianan pretended to be filled with righteous indignation and angrily complained, Tang Jing, you still have the face to ask those servants to testify for you. Could it be that you've forgotten what you did at that time? Not only did you kill Jian Shisan, you even started a massacre and killed all the servants of our Song family. The dead tell no tales, so you're trying in vain to use this kind of lowly lie to sow discord? Tang Jing, could it be that you're treating all of us as fools and allowing you to deceive us? Song Jianan's false accusation made Tang Jing realize that this old ginger was indeed spicy enough. This ability to reverse black and white had reached perfection. Moreover, a strong chill rose in Tang Jing's heart. Song Jianan actually said that those servants were all dead. What this meant, Tang Jing was all too clear. These people were definitely dead, and they did not die by his hands, but by Song Jianan's hands. In order to protect the secret of that day, he did not hesitate to sacrifice so many people. This kind of ruthlessness and determination was inconceivable and made people shudder. The dead tell no tales and Tang Jing could not produce any strong evidence at all. Instead, he was falsely accused, causing him to have no way to clearly explain what happened that day. He said indignantly, Song Jianan, you're ruthless. You actually killed all of your own servants. Then I have nothing to say, but justice is in the hearts of the people. A complacent look flashed across Song Yu's eyes and she urged, Master, let's do it. Take revenge for eldest senior brother and pay with blood. Seeing that Tang Jing was unable to produce any strong evidence, although the sword god revealed a puzzled expression, he did not make things difficult for the Song family. Instead, he stared at Tang Zheng and said with killing intent, "Disciples' words are reasonable. Let's not talk too much, let's kill him first." In the end, he still chose to believe in the Song family. He walked straight towards Tang Zheng. The sword god was short and even had a disability. He walked with a limp, 1 foot high and 1 foot low, but wherever he passed, deep footprints would be left on the ground. When he reached the entrance of the courtyard, the sword chi was already like a rainbow. His short and even ugly body suddenly changed greatly, as if he had become an omnipotent giant. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, his entire body tensed up, and he was ready to attack. "Stop." Suddenly, a thunderous roar rolled over, and a group of people rushed over from afar. Yan Padian stood at the front of the group with an extraordinary bearing. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyun were among them, and another familiar person also attracted Tang Zheng's gaze, Qin Badian. Back then, Qin Badian had protected Tang Zheng without hesitation, and Tang Zheng had always remembered this friendship. Now that the two of them had not seen each other for several months, seeing Qin Badian now, Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. Both sides volunteered to help Tang Zheng. Their eyes and ears were all over the capital, and when they heard that the Song family had mobilized a large force and surrounded Tang Zheng's residence, both sides rushed over without stopping. Qin Badian did not know the sword god, but he could tell that this unassuming old man's strength was unfathomable. Although Yan Padian had never seen the sword god before, he recognized him with a single glance and was overwhelmed with shock. This was because Yan Padian thought that compared to the sword god, one was in the sky and one was on the ground. Although they had not fought, all of this was already destined by the heavens. Yan Padian did not have any intention of retreating. Instead, his fighting spirit was ignited, and he wished that he could immediately compete with the sword god. Everyone subconsciously looked at this group of people. As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Qishan had already stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him, glaring at the sword god like a tiger eyeing its prey. The sword god raised his eyebrows and looked at Yan Padian in ridicule. The two of them were old men, but their appearances and temperaments were completely different. The sword god had the eyes of a mouse, and if a stranger were to see him, even a baby would be scared to tears. As for Yan Padian, although he trained hard most of the time, he was pampered and held a high position. Furthermore, he had a handsome appearance and was definitely a model among the old men. But facing the sword god's mocking gaze, Yan Padian did not dare to be arrogant, but he did not retreat either and said, "Your Excellency sword god, if you want to kill Tang Zheng, then you have to pass through my hurdle first. I also want to experience your Excellency sword god's skills." Yan Potion's words were loud and clear, and entered everyone's ears clearly, causing many people to be moved. How much courage did it take to directly challenge the sword god? The people from the other 3 great clans looked at Yan Padian as if he was a madman, and discussed animatedly. Yan Padian must be crazy. He actually dares to provoke the sword god. Does he not know how to write the word death? That's right, how could he be a match for the sword god? For Tang Zheng, he was actually willing to sacrifice his life. Is the relationship between Tang Zheng and the Yan family that close? So what if they're close? They don't know what's good for them. Isn't it just nice that they were taken care of by the sword god this time? One after another, they did not think highly of Yan Padian at all, but Yan Padian turned a deaf ear to them. Like a shield, he stood in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. Tang Zheng was moved, the Yan family had treated him well, this favor was too great, how could he let him take the risk? He advised in a low voice, "Elder Yan, the sword god is here for me, I will deal with him." However, Yan Padian stubbornly shook his head and said resolutely, "I have long wanted to experience the sword god's skills, you don't have to worry about me." Seeing that his attitude was firm, Tang Zheng swallowed his words of persuasion. He only made up his mind if Yan Potion's strength was insufficient, then he would definitely help him. "Then be careful, Elder Yan." Yan Padian nodded and looked at the sword god warily. The sword god looked at Yan Padian with disdain and said, "Since you are courting death, then I will satisfy you." Shwa. The sword light of the nameless sword lit up in an instant. The sword was originally nameless, but because of the sword god, the illustrious name of the nameless sword spread out, causing people to feel fear. Yan Potion's pupils constricted. He took a deep breath and activated the Dragon Elephant Kung Fu. This was the consummate skill that he had cultivated his entire life, and when he fought with Tian Chanzi back then, he had also used the Dragon Elephant Kung Fu, but he had lost. Now that he was using the Dragon Elephant Kung Fu against his enemy, he did not know whether he would win or lose. The aura around Yan Potion's body suddenly changed, as though he had turned into a dragon. Of course, this was far from a true dragon. Tang Zheng's heart moved. If Yan Padian had a little bit of dragon qi in his body, then it would definitely be of great benefit to the dragon elephant Kung Fu, and its power would increase greatly. This was like the finishing touch of a painting, making the dragon elephant Kung Fu live up to its name. Tang Zheng's finger was as fast as lightning as it pointed at the spine of Yen Potion's back. Yen Potion's entire body trembled. Before he could understand what had happened, he felt a boundless energy pouring in from his back. He was overwhelmed with shock. This kind of energy was something he had never heard of before, but without a doubt this energy was extremely mystical, and was perfectly comparable to his dragon elephant Kung Fu. Ka. All the bones in Yen Potion's body crackled. His inner strength surged like a river, quickly increasing, and in the blink of an eye, his cultivation actually went up another level, reaching the shocking 6th level of the Grandmaster realm. Yen Potion's cultivation had always suppressed the people from the other families, but it was still extremely difficult for him to make a breakthrough, especially when his cultivation was so high, unless it was a coincidence. However, just because of the energy that Tang Zheng had injected into him, his cultivation had increased by 1 level. This kind of almost impossible thing had happened to him, and it could be said to be a miracle. For a moment he was actually unable to react as his eyes stared blankly. Immediately he became even more curious as to what this energy was and why it was so powerful. If the dragon qi was injected into someone else's body, it would not have such an effect at all. This was a miracle that only happened when it complemented his dragon elephant Kung Fu. Before the start of the battle, his cultivation had increased, which was a good sign. Yen Potion's confidence increased greatly. He turned his head and nodded slightly at Tang Zheng. His gratitude could not be more obvious. The sword god also looked at Yen Padian in shock. This sudden breakthrough in cultivation during the battle was too miraculous. He couldn't help but look at Tang Zheng, guessing that it must be the effect of that finger just now. Chapter 820. The change in Yen Padian was obvious in the eyes of many discerning people. They looked at each other in dismay, revealing expressions of shock. When they saw him attacking the sword god without hesitation, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Brr. Yen Padian let out a long roar like a dragon's roar, his aura surging like a rainbow. The mocking expression on the sword god's face faded quite a bit as the nameless sword pierced down from the sky. Under the sunlight, the crack on the nameless sword was especially dazzling. Every time the sword god saw this crack, he would uncontrollably recall the scene in the sky cavern. Tang Zheng had fused with the sword's soul, and with a single move, he had actually caused a crack to appear on the nameless sword. The damage to the nameless sword that had accompanied him for decades was an eternal pain in his heart. The sword god loved the sword like a fool, and was often jokingly called a fool. With his sword damaged, his mood could be imagined, and the depth of his resentment towards Tang Zheng could also be imagined. This was something that had never happened before, causing his mind to tremble at that time. He pulled his disciple Qi Sha and retreated. What he did not know was that the sword was not done by Tang Zheng, but was controlled by Qi Yu's heart, causing it to be overused. At this moment he saw that Tang Zheng had helped Yen Padian raise his cultivation with a light finger, so he became even more determined to get rid of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng, you killed my disciple the sword 13, then you must have seen his 13 swords. Today I will use the 13 swords to defeat this person, and let you know the power of my sword pavilion sword techniques, and pay tribute to my disciple's soul. As soon as he finished speaking, the nameless sword turned into 2 into 4. In the end it became 13 swords. This was not a real sword, but 13 sword qis that slashed towards Yen Padian in one go. The 13 swords only had a total of 13 moves and they cycled endlessly. The sword god was a level higher than the sword 13, so when the 13 moves were used together, they became 13 sword qis. Puff puff puff. The air was split into several parts by the 13 swords, shooting in all directions. The space in front of Yen Padian became a vacuum. Boom. Yen Potion's fist struck the vacuum, rumbling like thunder. Sword qi and fist shadows surged, and a faint golden light flickered within the fist shadows. Yen Potion's heart trembled as he stared at the golden light that occasionally flashed in disbelief. This was a phenomenon that had never appeared before. This golden light was both familiar and unfamiliar. But without a doubt, because of this flickering golden light, its power had increased greatly. This must be the energy that Tang Zheng injected into my body, but what exactly is it, to actually raise my dragon form method by so much? Yen Padian muttered in his heart. Fist shadows and sword qi intertwined, filling the sky with qi energy. Many of the spectators were still weak, so they were forced to gasp for breath. Their faces were pale as they retreated. However, many experts stared at the two of them as if they had understood something. A life and death battle between experts of this level was rare. It could give people a lot of insights. This was something that couldn't be bought with money. Naturally, they wouldn't miss this good opportunity. Inside the house, a group of women held their breaths as they watched the battle. Without a doubt, the shock that this brought to some of them could be imagined. Other than Marshall and Empyrean Fairy, who were calm and collected, the expressions of the others were very interesting. They finally understood what Tang Jing meant by his words earlier. Someone had come, but not as a guest, but as an enemy of life and death. They gradually experienced the stormy seas that Tang Jing had experienced in his life, and all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. Empyrean Fairy had long seen through Tang Jing's intentions, so she said as if nothing had happened, "Look carefully, the storms and waves he will experience in the future will only be greater and more terrifying than this. Therefore, staying by his side she would never feel monotonous. His life was an adventure filled with endless excitement. You have to adjust your mentality, otherwise you will be frightened again and again." Presumably, Tang Jing doesn't want to see this. These were all smart people. They finally guessed the reason why Tang Jing had left them to watch the battle. This was a preventive measure and also a symbolic signal. If they could adapt to this kind of scene in life, then Tang Jing would bring them along to see the scenery of life. Mu Hongyan's cheeks were slightly red. The other women all had an unclear relationship with Tang Jing. If they were to say that he would bring them along to see the scenery of life, there would naturally be no problem. But he had left her behind. Could it be there was some kind of thought-provoking deep meaning behind this? Thinking to this point, Mu Hongyan's little heart began to beat violently. She then took a deep breath and suppressed the chaotic thoughts in her heart. She secretly blamed herself. What was wrong with her? She was like a little girl who had never experienced anything. "Master, can Nana also become this powerful in the future?" Nana was not afraid at all. She was enjoying the battle with great interest as if she was watching a movie. When the Empyrean Fairy heard this, she revealed a gentle smile and firmly said, "You won't become as powerful as them. Instead, you will definitely be more powerful than them and more than just a little." "Wow, that's great. Nana will become powerful and then protect Big Brother." The little girl waved her small pink fist and cheered happily. Seeing that the two of them were unable to determine the winner for a while, Tang Jing's gaze swept through the crowd and locked onto an enemy that made him particularly jealous: Song Yu. Song Yu had gone against him time and time again. At the martial arts assembly, she had used the spirit transformation pill to harm him in an attempt to let him die at the hands of the werewolves. Later on, she had targeted him time and time again and even had designs on Yi Dingdang. Therefore, Tang Jing had long since had the intention to kill her. In the past, Song Yu was like a turtle hiding in its shell. Now that he had the support of the sword god, he walked out fearlessly. Tang Jing laughed coldly, his figure flashed, and the War Soul sword looked down from above, cleanly slashing down at Song Yu. "Protect me?" Song Yu's first reaction was not to counterattack, but to seek the protection of others. She even had to flee in panic and hide behind the crowd. Song Yu had long since lost the thought of competing with Tang Jing, so she obediently ran away, which was the best way to save her life. "Arrogant brat, stop." Song Jianan had been staring at the battle the entire time, but he suddenly reacted. With a wave of his arm he attacked Tang Jing. The Thousand Needles broken bone hand was ever-changing, and had once caused Tang Jing to suffer a lot. This time, Tang Jing had long been on guard against him, so with a flash of sword light, the War Soul sword slashed towards that hand. Song Jianan was originally at the 4th level of the Grandmaster stage, but after Tang Jing used the sky-swallowing technique to absorb 2 levels of his cultivation, he was reduced to the 2nd level of the Grandmaster stage. At the same time, Tang Jing's strength had greatly increased, and he had already reached the 5th level of the Gold Core stage. Their fighting strength could be imagined and there was no need to compare. Even a blind person could see that Tang Jing was much more powerful. When the sword light fell, Song Jianan's arm could no longer move forward. Otherwise he would definitely end up with a broken arm. Forced to retreat, he was forced to retreat. As soon as they exchanged blows, the two sides were able to determine the winner, which was unexpected. Especially the people from the Yi and Chu families, their expressions were especially interesting. They knew very little about the changes in Tang Jing during this period of time, so they were at a loss for what to do. Tang Jing's aura was like a rainbow as he pounced on his opponent. Song Jianan fought and retreated in a sorry state. His face and ears were red like a monkey's butt. Seeing that Tang Zheng was chasing after him again, he did not care about the dignity of the head of the family. He actually grabbed a few of his subordinates around him and threw them at Tang Zheng, trying to stop him from chasing after him. Tang Zheng easily dodged, and the War Soul sword stabbed straight at Song Jianan's back. Save me. Song Jianan was really disgraced. He had no choice but to directly call for help. He and Song Yu were like family with a kind of demeanor. When the Yi and Chu families saw this, they looked at each other. As an ally they were ashamed. But if Song Jianan died, it would be even more tragic for them. After all, they were here to help the Song clan. Moreover, if Song Jianan died, then wouldn't Tang Jing turn around to deal with them? Wouldn't that be terrible? Of course, they had firm confidence that the sword god would win. At that time, there would be no chance for Tang Jing to jump around. The sword god was Song Yu's master. If they did not help the Song family now, then they would not be able to bear the consequences. Therefore, no matter what, they could not stay out of this. Tang Jing, stop. Yi Xuanji roared and took the lead to charge towards Tang Jing, trying to stop him. Chu Mingxian was not willing to fall behind and attacked as well. Yi Xuanji had been cultivating wholeheartedly for the past half a year, and his cultivation had increased from the first level of the Grandmaster stage to the second level of the Grandmaster stage. If it wasn't for Tang Jing, he wouldn't even be able to cross the threshold of the Grandmaster stage, but he didn't know how to be grateful at all. After the death of the previous patriarch Chu Chongyang, Chu Mingxian also worked hard, and actually managed to reach the first level of the Great Master stage. The three Great Master stage experts surrounded and attacked Tang Jing. Song Jianan was lucky enough to escape and heaved a sigh of relief. He was shocked in his heart. The growth of this brat's power was getting more and more abnormal. He was obviously stronger than last time. Yi Xuanji and Chu Mingxian worked together to attack. Yi Xuanji used a sword and Chu Mingxian used a blade, and it was the sunset blade technique that was passed down in their family. Tang Jing had already experienced the sunset blade technique from Chu Chongyang, and was well aware of its power. Facing several master-level experts, Tang Jing did not dare to be careless as he thrust out his sword. Shua shua shua, the heaven-flying immortal sword technique was nimble and elegant, just like an immortal. His sword attack was like a flying immortal, causing the two to be unable to defend against it. Although the heavenly fairy swordsmanship was not the best swordsmanship in the eyes of the fairy of the ninth heaven, it was the most exquisite swordsmanship in the eyes of Yi and Chu. When the sword came, it gave people the illusion that it was unstoppable. Roar. Kill. However, the two of them were resolute people after all. With a loud roar, they dispelled the strange thoughts in their hearts. The large blade slashed down, like a setting sun descending from the sky. The large blade glowed with sunlight, and its aura was terrifying. Ever since Yi Xuanji saw Yi Dingdong's wind-chasing sword technique, he seemed to have comprehended something. His attainments in sword arts had increased by another level, which was why he was able to break through to the second level of the Great Master stage. Ding ding dang. Clang. The swords and blades clashed, creating a series of intense sparks. The people who were standing close to them were injured by the sword chi and retreated in panic. However, there were two people who did not retreat. Yan Qishan and Qin Badian looked at each other and rushed forward without hesitation. Bullying us with numbers, do you really think we don't have anyone left? Chapter 821. Yan Qishan and Qin Baishan's participation in the battle caused the situation to become chaotic. The Song Yi and Chu families no longer watched quietly. Instead, they roared and rushed towards the people brought by the Yan family and Qin Badian. These people were very clear that they were not the opponents of these masters, but they did not mind getting rid of others. In an instant, the front of the villa became a killing field. Swords and knives faced each other, cold light flashed everywhere, murderous aura soared, blood flew, and both sides suffered casualties. The difference in strength was immediately revealed. But the three families obviously had more people, so the Yan family was forced to retreat. Yan Luyun was as light as a swallow. He shuttled through the crowd, knocking down one enemy after another, protecting his own side. Chu Xiaofeng mixed in the crowd and suddenly rushed out, preparing to sneak attack Yan Luyun. But Yan Luyun's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He successfully counterattacked, hitting his chest and falling to the ground. Among the four masters of the capital, Yan Luyun was first, followed by Song Yu Yiku and Chu Xiaofeng. After Chu Xiaofeng suffered a big loss in the hands of Tang Jing, his reputation declined. Coupled with the fall of the Chu family, the title of the four masters of the capital was in jeopardy. Chu Xiaofeng wanted to revive his prestige, so he prepared to sneak attack Yan Luyun. But he did not think that his strength was not enough. He was easily counterattacked by Yan Luyun, causing serious injuries. When Yi Ke saw this, she couldn't stay out of the matter. She came to Yan Luyun's front in an open and above-board manner. She cupped her fist and said gracefully, "Yan Xiao, I ask for your advice." Yan Luyun's expression became cold and serious. Yi Ke was not comparable to Chu Xiaofeng. Among the four masters of the capital, Yi Ke was very low-key, but her strength could not be underestimated. "Please?" Yan Luyun cupped his fist and attacked. The two people's movements were very fast, as if they were dancing. They shuttled back and forth in the crowd to dodge. They were fighting very happily. Yi Tianming was not idle. Although he had not reached the level of a master, he was also a Xiantian master. His strength was profound and he had already hit many people. Suddenly, in this chaotic battle, the Yan family was at a disadvantage. Suddenly, three figures came from a distance, especially one sword that was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it was in front of Yi Tianming, blocking his attack. Yi Tianming's pupils shrank as he exclaimed, "Ding dang!" Because of the coincidence, Yi not only practiced the Jade Heart Sutra, but also the wind swordsmanship skill. And with her close relationship with Tang Zheng, her cultivation, hers, and her close relationship, wind swordsmanship, S's, wind swordsmanship, and wind sword. And because of a coincidence, and hers, she, wind swordsmanship, and her, and s. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang originally did not notice this point, but this time when they heard the news and rushed over, they finally noticed this point. They were both surprised and had mixed feelings. As parents, being surpassed by their daughter was naturally something to be happy about, but they also felt a little jealous. Yi Dingdang was very clear that her parents were slightly inferior to Yi Tianming. Moreover, Yi Tianlei remembered their brotherhood. Of course, he could not go all out or he would be at a disadvantage. Yi Dingdang could not stand by and watch her parents put themselves in danger, so she bravely took on this burden. She did not have much feelings for Yi Tianming. After all, she had not even spoken to him a few times. The breeze sword in Yi Dingdang's hands showed its power. It complemented the wind swordsmanship. This was the first time she used the breeze sword to fight, so she could not use it freely at first. But even so, Yi Tianming's expression was very interesting. He had not paid much attention to Yi Dingdang. After all, she was just a junior who suddenly appeared, so he naturally ignored her. But at this moment, when he saw her swordsmanship, all the contempt in his heart disappeared. He was full of shock and looked at her in disbelief. "Yi Dingdang, how did you become so powerful?" Yi Dingdang snorted coldly and did not say a word. She stabbed her sword as fast as lightning. The wind swordsmanship was about speed and accuracy. She had already memorized the essence of the swordsmanship. Naturally, it was very powerful. After more than 10 moves, Yi Tianming knew that he was not Yi Dingdang's opponent. He had practiced martial arts for decades, but he was actually suppressed by a junior. This was a great humiliation. He roared angrily and resisted. But Yi Dingdang was still firmly suppressing him, so he could not do anything. There were already many wounds on his body and he was in a sorry state. Yi Meiyu hid behind the crowd and looked at Yi Meiyu from afar. She was in a daze and muttered to herself, "How did this bitch become so powerful?" Yi Meiyu had been secretly competing with Yi Dingdang. Ever since Yi Dingdang's family of 3 broke away from the Ye family, she had been complacent for a long time. In addition, she had set up a marriage contract with Song Yu, which gave her the illusion that she was the winner. She did not put Yi Dingdang in her eyes at all. But at this moment, seeing that her father, whom she had always respected, was no match for Yi Dingdang, all her confidence collapsed and her heart turned to ashes. She asked her fiancé Song Yu in a panic, "What's going on?" Song Yu's eyes were vicious as if they could spit out fire. He glared at Yi Dingdang fiercely. Originally, he could have had Yi Dingdang, but all of this was because of Tang Zheng's interference, causing his plan to fail. He had no choice but to compromise and get engaged to Yi Dingdang. He was extremely clear about Yi Meiyu's romantic affairs. Comparing Yi Meiyu and Yi Dingdang, one was a phoenix in the sky and the other was a crow on the ground. The difference between them was obvious. Hearing her question, Song Yu said snappily, "Aren't you a member of the Ye family? If you don't know, how would I know?" Yi Meiyu was furious after being scolded. She glared at Song Yu angrily. Song Yu's eyes turned cold, causing her to feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She kept quiet out of fear. "Let's go. This place is too dangerous." Yi Meiyu admitted defeat and said coquettishly. She had originally come to watch the show. With her little skills, she would only be sending herself to her death. Moreover, how could she, who had been pampered since she was young, really make a move? Now that there was no show to watch and there was even the danger of losing her life, of course she didn't want to stay any longer. Song Yu looked at her with disdain and shouted angrily, "Scram!" Then Song Yu once again rushed into the battle. Song Yu still believed that his master could kill Tang Jing, so how could he give up halfway and run away? Not only would this cause him to lose face, it would also cause his master to look down on him, which was the most fatal thing. His sword technique still had a long way to go, and if he did not have his master to guide him, then his martial arts would almost reach the end. Yi Meiyu glared fiercely at Song Yu's back as it disappeared into the crowd and muttered, "What are you being so fierce for? I won't play with you. If you die in the end, then so be it." Song Yu did not know that he had been cursed by his fiancée. Seeing that Yan Qishan and Qin Badian were entangled with Yi Xuanji and Chu Mingxian, Tang Jing finally had time to attack Song Jianan, who was in the crowd, while Song Hanjun and his father, Song Jianan, stood on the same side as Tang Jing, working together to resist Tang Jing. Even so, Tang Jing was not at a disadvantage at all. The War Soul sword light flashed, forcing the two of them to stagger back. Song Yu's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. With a low roar, he quietly launched a sneak attack on Tang Jing. Tang Jing moved and immediately discovered Song Yu's figure. With a backhand slash, the War Soul sword pierced through Song Yu's abdomen. With a shake of his arm, Song Yu flew into the crowd like a kite with a broken string. He fell into a pool of blood and was even ruthlessly stepped on by a few people. Song Hanjun screamed in shock and rushed to Song Yu's side. He helped him up, only to see that his entire body was covered in blood, and he no longer had the bearing of an elegant young master. Although that sword strike was not fatal, it still caused Song Yu to suffer. His breath was weak as he said weakly, "Father, you must kill Tang Jing." Song Hanjun clenched his teeth and nodded fiercely, "Don't worry, with Senior Sword God here, none of the enemies today will be let off." As he spoke, he looked into the villa. Behind the window, the few beautiful faces were exceptionally clear. Tang Jing's luck with women is not shallow, to actually hide so many women in the Golden House. He hurt my son, so I'll kill his woman and make him wish he was dead." Song Hanjun gritted his teeth. Whiz. Song Hanjun was like a gust of wind as he rushed towards the villa. Tang Jing glanced at Song Hanjun's movements from the corner of his eyes. He was well aware of his intentions, but he did not stop him as if he did not see him at all. Song Hanjun rushed to the door, extremely excited. In his subconscious mind, these women looked beautiful, but they were all weak people, and killing them would be a piece of cake. As for whether or not he would feel guilty about killing a group of women and children, that was definitely not the case. He could even kill his own servants who had been with him for many years, so why wouldn't he be able to kill a few strange women? The door was kicked open by him. With a shake of his sword, he pierced in. The sword light was cold and dense. Bang! Suddenly, a palm silently struck his chest. His chest suddenly caved in, and a clear palm print was imprinted on his chest. He was like a kite with a broken string as he flew backwards. The sword in his hand involuntarily flew out of his hand. The sky and earth were spinning. He was absolutely sure that his blood was boiling. His face and ears were red and blood was flowing out of his eyes. He landed heavily on the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood, dyeing the ground red. "Who hurt me? Aren't there only a few women inside? Why am I injured?" He was panting like an ox and his face was getting redder and redder. However, he could not figure out what was going on. This was clearly an easy task, but he had messed it up. He raised his head with difficulty and looked towards the house. He saw a person standing at the door, a calm woman. He noticed his hand and immediately understood that he had been hit by her. Wu Yuan looked at Song Hanjun from afar. That attack just now was with all her strength, without any fanciful movements. The power of the Fire Nether Divine Palm was fully displayed. She did not take advantage of the situation to pursue him, because there was no need for that. That palm strike had already broken his heart meridian. He was dead for sure. Sure enough, Song Hanjuan's breathing became more and more hurried, and more blood flowed out of his eyes. He still stared at Wu, wanting to say a few ruthless words, but he was unable to say anything. He could only hear a whimpering sound coming from his throat. Suddenly, his entire body stiffened and he fell down, his life force severed. Chapter 822. Song Hanjuan's death. The majority of the people were shocked beyond words. Song Hanjuan's identity was not something ordinary warriors could compare to. He was the successor of the Song family, a candidate for the next patriarch, but he died just like that. It was too fast, catching everyone off guard and causing them to suck in a breath of cold air. Everyone could not help but look into the house and coincidentally saw Marshall standing at the door as well as many beauties behind the window. Upon seeing this, the Yen family's morale soared as they roared, "Kill!" Song Hanjuan's death had struck a blow to the three great families' morale, causing many to feel fear in their hearts. Even Yi Xuanji and the rest could not help but feel their eyelids twitch. Song Yu weakly laid on the ground as he watched his father die. He cried out in a heart-wrenching voice, "Father!" Song Jianan's eyes were red. He did not expect this to happen. He was originally confident in this battle, but his son was the first to die. "Tang Zheng, I will kill you!" Song Jianan roared as he attacked Tang Zheng with his 1,000 needles bone-breaking hand. However, he had already lost his footing and this attack was full of flaws. Tang Zheng squinted his eyes as he stood still. When Song Jianan's attack arrived in front of him, he raised his sword and pierced Song Jianan's shoulder, causing blood to flow. Song Jia Sigma, Song Jianan grimaced in pain as if he had just awoken from a dream. This was a battle of life and death. If he was not careful, he would lose his life. This was not the time to be impulsive. As a result, he hurriedly retreated. Before the War Soul Sword could cause even more damage, he retreated far away and avoided the fatal blow. All he saw was a deep sword mark at the place where he was just standing, and stone fragments flew everywhere. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up. Song Hanjuan's death was his own doing. He did not expect that martial arts would be able to kill him in one strike. It could only be said that Song Hanjun was too arrogant, looking down on everyone, thinking that everyone in the room was a soft persimmon, and was not on guard at all. Since Song Jun was dead, the next one would be Song Jianan. He would definitely not let him escape. Otherwise, there would be no end to his troubles. Tang Zheng's attacks suddenly became fiercer and fiercer, adding a few more wounds to Song Jianan's body. Just at this time, he suddenly heard a cry of alarm, only to see Yen Padian flying backwards, crashing into a big tree before stopping, and his chest was already dyed red with blood. Tang Zheng was shocked. In the battle between the Sword God and Yen Padian was ultimately unable to catch up and lost. Seeing the Sword God thrusting a few more times towards Yen Padian, Tang Zheng had no choice but to give up on Song Jianan. With a leap, he blocked in front of Yen Padian and activated his War Soul Sword, blocking the few sword strikes with clanging sounds. Yen Potion's face was a little pale and his expression was dejected as he said, "I'm really useless, I actually still lost to him. His sword techniques are truly exquisite and powerful." Tang Zheng asked with concern, "Senior Yen, how are you feeling?" Yen Padian said dejectedly, "I won't die yet, don't worry." Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief and said, "You rest first, I'll take care of the Sword God." Yen Padian did not know what Tang Zheng's cultivation level was, so he could only warn him, "Then be careful, the Sword God's sword technique is indeed worthy of its reputation, it is truly powerful." The Sword God stood 3 meters away, staring at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and said, "If you want to go up, then come." Tang Zheng raised his sword and attacked, only to see 13 sword chis arriving in the blink of an eye. He could only use his sword to block, but these 13 sword chis were endless, rising and falling one after another. These were the 13 moves of the 13 swords. They were the same 13 moves over and over again, but in the hands of the Sword God, their power was enormous and mighty. Tang Zheng blocked the first few moves, but the ones behind came again, causing him to be flustered. Holy Armor Shield. With a thought from Tang Zheng, the Holy Armor Shield appeared out of thin air, blocking all the sword moves. The 13 swords instantly lost their threat. As long as he was unable to break through the Holy Armor Shield, then the 13 swords would be useless. The Sword God was very clear on this point. Looking at the unassuming shield, he snorted coldly and said, "Cultivators are indeed cunning and have many tricks up their sleeves. But do you think you can stop me just like that?" The Sword God jumped up high and descended from the sky, muttering to himself, "Flying down 3,000 feet, I suspect that the Milky Way is descending from the 9 heavens." Just as he finished speaking the word heaven, he descended from the sky. The nameless sword erupted with a white light, and coincidentally, the Milky Way above the 9 heavens flew straight down, fiercely slashing down. Tang Zheng had never seen this sword technique before, but he could already deeply feel its power, and immediately raised the Holy Armor Shield. Boom! The Holy Armor Shield almost fell out of his hands. At the last moment, Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and held on, grabbing onto the Holy Armor Shield, but his body flew far away along with the holy armor shield, and only stopped after smashing into a big tree. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Tang Jing struggled to get up. Without a doubt, this sword technique of the sword god was more powerful than the 13 swords from before. It was grand and majestic, as if it could communicate with the heaven and earth and draw the power of the heaven and earth for its own use. The sword god's face revealed a somewhat complacent expression as he gently stroked the nameless sword in his hand. The nameless sword was just an ordinary wooden sword, but in the hands of the sword god, it was a treasured sword comparable to a peerless divine weapon. The others were also frightened by this sword. Facing this sword, many people did not even dare to think of resisting, but Tang Jing stubbornly resisted it. This already showed that Tang Jing was very powerful. The people of the 3 great clans were all pleasantly surprised. The power of the sword god was indeed unparalleled. This time Tang Jing was dead for sure. Song Jinan's face was ashen, his hands clenched into fists, and he muttered, "Kill, kill, kill, you must kill Tang Jing." Even the calm Empyrean fairy and Marshall had a strange expression on their faces. Marshall was shocked. She did not expect the sword god's sword technique to be so domineering. As for the Empyrean fairy, her eyelids twitched slightly, and then returned to normal. She muttered to herself, "This person's sword technique has indeed reached a higher level. He has glimpsed the profound meaning of sword techniques, and is only a step away from the Martial King realm." The Martial King realm was 1 level higher than the Grandmaster realm. Many warriors did not even dare to dream of it, and countless Grandmaster warriors stopped at the threshold of the Martial King realm. To cross this threshold, not only did it depend on oneself, one's diligence, and most importantly, one's luck. If one did not have a suitable opportunity, it would be difficult to cross this threshold in one's lifetime. However, in the eyes of the Empyrean fairy, the sword god had a chance to cross this threshold, not only because of his cultivation in sword techniques, but also because of his extremely firm heart towards sword techniques. He was a person who was addicted to the sword, and all his thoughts were on the sword without any distractions. If this kind of person could not succeed, then others would not have a chance. Tang Jing stared at the sword god in disbelief. He was sure that he had never seen this sword technique before, so he asked in a deep voice, "What sword technique is this?" "Ninth Heaven Falling Galaxy," the sword god replied. Tang Jing immediately thought of the poem he had just recited. Flying down 3,000 feet like the Milky Way falling from the 9th heaven. Without a doubt, the 9 heavens Milky Way fall sword art was comprehended from this poem. This was a true master of sword arts who could comprehend a sword art from a poem. "How does it taste?" the sword god asked. "Very good, I want to taste it again." Tang Jing roared and rushed up again. This time he changed from defense to offense. All of his sword techniques were sharp. Not only did he use the heaven-flying immortal sword technique, but he also used the wind-chasing sword technique. His sword techniques were complicated and his sword chi was unhindered, dazzling the eyes. The sword god had secretly looked at Yi Dingdong's wind-chasing sword technique and said in surprise, "So you and that little girl both know this sword technique, but it is obvious that the little girl's attainment in this sword technique is higher than yours." Yi Dingdong had been practicing the wind-chasing sword technique, and she also had the breeze sword, so the power she displayed was naturally greater than Tang Jing's. The sword god had a pair of fiery eyes so he could see who was better at a glance. The sword god also quickly used his sword. The 9th Heaven Falling Galaxy sword technique was majestic and grand, and its power was peerless. It had the power to sweep through everything, making Tang Jing rather passive. After a round of battle, Tang Jing was actually retreating step by step. The sword god's sword was very fast. Before the first strike was finished, another strike was raised. Even his eyes were filled with swords, extremely sharp. Seeing that, the people from the 3 great families cheered. Some of them were already shouting excitedly, thinking that they were bound to win. Tang Jing knew that things were not good. If he continued to be passive, the situation would be even worse. Seeing the sword god thrusting his sword at him again, Tang Jing stretched out his hand, and actually brushed past the sword edge, trying to grab onto the sword god's hand. Obviously, the War Soul Sword could not do anything to the sword god, so he could only use the sky swallowing technique. However, the sword god was extremely sharp. With a shake of his arm, the nameless sword smashed into Tang Jing's palm. A terrifying power was transmitted to his palm, as if it wanted to shatter his body and shatter his bones. Tang Jing reacted on the spot and hurriedly used the swallowing heaven technique. Shwa, a black hole appeared in his palm and instantly sucked in the terrifying power, resolving the crisis of his body being smashed into pieces. "Let's absorb your nameless sword first." Tang Jing activated his power, and the suction force of the black hole increased greatly. The nameless sword trembled violently, as if it was about to fly into the black hole. The sword god's expression changed and he exclaimed, "How evil, this technique is really hard to guard against. You want to steal my nameless sword? Dream on." The nameless sword hummed, and a sword light rushed into the sky, fiercely striking the black hole, but it disappeared without a trace. The sword god was stunned, shocked by the power of the black hole. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and a huge crack spread from the tip of his foot to the distance. He had already retreated more than 10 meters with the nameless sword, escaping from the black hole. This series of attacks and counterattacks flowed like water, beautiful and unrestrained. It did not look like a simple sword technique but an art. It was refreshing. However, under the beautiful appearance there was often danger. This beautiful nine-heaven galaxy fall sword technique hid an indescribable danger. "What technique is this?" the sword god asked solemnly. "Sky-swallowing technique." What an arrogant name. "Then let's see if your sky-swallowing technique or my nameless sword is stronger." The sword god snorted and attacked fearlessly again. This time his footsteps were extremely strange. He did not walk straight but instead curved and curved as if he was swimming. However, Tang Jing immediately rejected this idea. This was not a snake but the way he moved forward. Water was formless, and the nine heavens galaxy fall sword technique was to turn the sword into water. Water had no fixed momentum, so the sword technique naturally had no fixed momentum. Chapter 8:23. The sword had no fixed momentum and the man had no fixed whereabouts. In an instant, the sword god successfully dodged the sky-swallowing technique, and the nameless sword went straight for Tang Jing's vitals. Tang Jing raised his palms and tried to clamp the nameless sword. The sword chi rippled and Tang Jing's palms involuntarily parted. The nameless sword went straight for Tang Jing's heart. Tang Jing quickly retreated and raised his palms in front of his chest again. He finally managed to clamp the nameless sword. His chest heaved up and down as if his heart was about to jump out. The nameless sword was still a hair's breadth away from piercing his chest. The nameless sword was clamped between the palms, and the sky-swallowing technique suction force was trying to suck it into the black hole. Seeing this, the sword god was shocked and roared furiously, "You're courting death." The nameless sword shone brightly, and the silver light was like the Milky Way. Thousands of sword chi poured out in all directions. Puff, puff, puff. The surrounding flowers, trees, buildings, and people were all affected by the sword chi. The flowers and trees were cut in half, and the buildings were riddled with holes. A few people immediately had deep bloody holes on their bodies and they fell to the ground dead. "Retreat." Someone yelled and hurriedly retreated until they were dozens of meters away. Then they stopped and looked at the scene in shock. Everywhere the sword chi passed, it was a mess. There were many casualties. Even the ground was cracked by the sword chi as if there was an earthquake. But what was surprising was that Tang Jing's villa was so close, but it was not damaged in the slightest. When the invisible sword chi reached the villa, it instantly disappeared as if it had never appeared. Many people were shocked and looked at the women standing behind the window in disbelief. Could there be an expert hiding in the villa? Otherwise, how could she so easily dissolve the sword god's sword chi? Perhaps even the few martial masters present would not be able to do this as easily as lifting a heavy weight. Without a doubt, the sword chi had been dissolved by the Empyrean fairy without leaving a trace. The Empyrean fairy looked surprised. She stared at the sword god and murmured, "This person's swordsmanship is exquisite and powerful. I'm afraid Tang Jing is in danger." When the girls heard this, their expressions changed and they asked anxiously, "Then what should we do?" They looked at each other in dismay. One could well imagine the shock this incident gave them. They finally realized how terrifying an individual's martial strength could be. Fang Shishir gritted her teeth and said, "I'll go save him." "I'm going too." Lu Qingmei also said fearlessly. Mu Hongyan hugged Nana anxiously. She didn't have the strength to truss a chicken, so she couldn't help but feel very guilty. Wu did not say anything as he lifted his leg and walked out. "Stop right there." The Empyrean fairy finally spoke. "You'll only be courting death if you go. Even if I die, I want to die together with Tang Jing." Fang Shishir stubbornly said. Lu Qingmei and Wu's identities were awkward, so they couldn't say it directly. However, the meaning between their eyebrows was more or less the same. The Empyrean fairy helplessly sighed and said, "With me here, he won't die." The girls all knew that the Empyrean fairy was powerful. Seeing her solemn vow, they couldn't help but be overjoyed. They nervously asked, "Really? The sword god is so powerful?" The Empyrean fairy calmly said, "The sword god is powerful, but in the end, he is still lacking." The Empyrean fairy's confidence made them all heave a sigh of relief. "Look, Tang Jing is already in danger. I beg you to quickly take action." Lu Qingmei finally couldn't hold back and earnestly advised. "There is a limit to a person's strength. Only by breaking through the limit will there be great gains. Tang Jing has not reached his limit. If I were to take action now, he would be able to survive. However, it would be a huge loss to waste the opportunity to fight a life-and-death battle with such an expert," the Empyrean fairy lightly said. Seeing that her words were reasonable, although they were worried, they didn't dare to persuade her anymore. They could only stare at the battlefield with their fists tightly clenched. The others also stared at the battlefield. Even the killing between them had weakened a lot. Yi Dingdang was worried about Tang Zheng. When she saw his urgent situation, she was extremely worried. Thus, she let out a low roar and the wind-chasing sword technique became even more fierce and strange, forcing Yi Tianming to stagger back. Finally, Yi Tianming revealed a flaw. The clear wind sword was peerlessly fast. In an instant it was pressed against his chest. Blood flowed out. With one more stab it would pierce through his heart. Ding ding dong. Yi Tianlei roared and hurriedly stopped his daughter. Yi Tianming saw the opportunity and escaped from the clear wind sword, saving his life. Ding dang, don't kill him. Yi Tianlei grabbed his daughter's hand and anxiously shook his head. After all, he is your uncle. Although Yi Tianlei had left the Ye family again, he still had feelings for the Ye family. Yi Tianming was his elder brother. Other than respect, he also had deep feelings for him. Moreover, if Yi Dingdang really killed Yi Tianming, it would be considered an offense. Her reputation would not be good. She didn't want her daughter to bear such a bad reputation. Yi Dingdang looked at her father and complained, "They don't treat you as a member of the Ye family." Yi Tianlei smiled bitterly and said, "They are them and I am me. I don't have to ask them to do things according to my style. But you are my daughter. I don't want you to make a big mistake." Yi Dingdang was very smart. Although she was unwilling, she understood her father's painstaking efforts. She nodded helplessly and said, "Okay, I will listen to you." Yi Tianming's face was gloomy. It was like the sky in June with dark clouds. It was extremely ferocious. He clenched his teeth and his hands were trembling. He had actually lost to a junior, and even needed Yi Tianlei to plead for him to live. This was simply a great humiliation. In the past, he schemed to frame Yi Tianlei and caused him to be expelled from the family. He lost the qualification to compete for the position of the head of the family. Therefore, he had always looked down on Yi Tianlei and had a deep hostility towards Yi Tianlei. This time, Yi Tianlei's return made him even more flustered. The future position of the head of the family was almost taken away by Yi Tianlei. Therefore, his hatred towards Yi Tianlei deepened. What brotherly love! He had never treated Yi Tianlei as a brother. He only saw Yi Tianlei as a stumbling block. He had tried many ways to kick this stumbling block away. However, this stumbling block was very tenacious. No matter how far he kicked it away, it would always come back. This made him unable to guard against it. At this moment, when he saw Yi Tianlei pleading for him, not only did he not feel grateful, but his anger burned even more fiercely. He felt that Yi Tianlei was looking at him as a joke. He deliberately used his daughter to humiliate him and then pretended to plead for him to win his favor. "Yi Tianlei, I will not be fooled by you. You are no longer a member of the Ye family. Leaving you in this world will cause endless trouble. If I kill you, there will be no one to compete with me for the position of the head of the family." Yi Tianming's eyes were red and flashed with the sparks of hatred. He raised his long sword and stabbed Yi Tianlei's back. The long sword stabbed and blood immediately came out. Yi Tianlei screamed in pain and exclaimed in disbelief, "Big brother, Yi Tianlei, I want you dead." Yi Tianming roared hysterically. Yi Dingdang originally dispelled her killing intent, but seeing this scene, her anger surged to the top of her head with a sound. Her killing intent surged as she shouted, "Shameless bastard, go die." The breeze sword pierced through Yi Tianlei's armpit and directly pierced Yi Tianlei's heart. Yi Tianming's movements froze. The long sword only pierced Yi Tianlei's muscles and did not hurt his internal organs. Yi Dingdang pulled her father and quickly retreated. She also withdrew the breeze sword. She supported her father and asked anxiously, "Dad, how are you?" When she saw that her back was stained with blood, her eyes immediately turned red and tears almost flowed out of her eyes. Yi Tianlei grimaced and took a deep breath. He said, "Dingdang, don't worry. I'm fine. This is only a superficial wound. I won't die. How is your uncle?" Yi Tianlei suddenly turned around and happened to see blood flowing out of Yi Tianming's chest. He looked at his chest in disbelief and gasped for breath. He exclaimed, "She actually injured me." He originally wanted to kill Yi Tianlei. However, he did not expect that Yi Dingdang would directly pierce his heart. He could clearly feel that his life was rapidly flowing away. He was not reconciled. It was clearly him who wanted to kill. Why was it that he was killed by this little girl? He suddenly raised his head and angrily stared at Yi Dingdang. He said, "You dare to kill me?" Although Yi Dingdang's heart could not bear it, she remembered that he had sneak attacked her father and her father had almost died under his sword. This trace of pity was thrown to the back of her mind. Being soft-hearted to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. So what if he was an elder? He did not care about their brotherhood. Why should she be merciful? Everyone had the right to kill a shameless person. You dare to kill my father, so I dare to kill you. What's wrong with that? Yi Dingdang mustered up her courage and retorted loudly. You. Yi Tianming wanted to say a few more ruthless words, but he found that he was powerless. He fell to the ground with a loud bang. His eyes were wide open. After exhaling his last breath, he was no longer alive. Yi Tianming was an important figure. Seeing him fall to the ground and die, many people's attention was attracted. Especially when all of this was done by Yi Dingdang, it was even more shocking. Yi Dingdang had only practiced martial arts for a few years, but she could actually kill Yi Tianming. This was too unbelievable. Yi Meiyu watched her father fall from afar. She did not rush over. Instead, she was so scared that her face turned pale. She sat on the ground and lost control of her bladder. She glanced at Yi Dingdang and saw her murderous aura. Her heart trembled. She was scared to death. She got up and was no longer in the mood to watch a good show. She screamed and fled. She did not care about the cold corpse lying on the ground. Yi Ku and Yi Xuanji rushed up recklessly. Looking at Yi Tianming in the pool of blood, it was as if they were immobilized. They were motionless. It was unbelievable. Suddenly Yi Ku raised her head and stared fiercely at Yi Dingdang, saying, "You killed my father." Yi Xuanji also raised his head and was furious. "You killed my son. I'm going to kill you." The two of them shouted in unison. "Father Yi Dingdang, this is all a misunderstanding. Dingdang made an unintentional mistake." Yi Tianlei resisted the pain of his wound and stood in front of Yi Dingdang, trying his best to explain. "I Yi Xuanji do not have such a rebellious granddaughter. Today I will kill her and avenge Tianming." Chapter 824. Yi Tianlei stood in front of Yi Dingdang and anxiously explained, "Father, you can't. Dingdang is trying to save me. Disgraceful. If you dare to stop me, I will also put righteousness before family and take care of you as well." Yi Xuanji angrily said. Yi Tianlei was still like a rock, not moving an inch, and resolutely said, "I am Dingdang's father. I should be the one to bear the responsibility." "Father, why should you bear the responsibility? It was clearly that person who wanted to kill you. If I didn't do anything, then the one who would die would be you. Daring to kill my father, Yi Dingdang will definitely not be merciful." Yi Dingdang did not budge an inch and righteously said, "You still dare to quibble? It seems like you don't put the Ye family in your eyes, you don't put your elders in your eyes, and I'm afraid you don't even put me, your grandfather, in your eyes?" Yi Dingdang raised her head and coldly snorted, "It was clearly you who were heartless. How can you blame us? Back then you chased my father out of the family, and then you pretended to take him back, and now you want to take the lives of us father and daughter for a shameless person. Dream on. I have been a member of the ordinary Balance Ye family since I was young, not a member of your Beijing Ye family." Yi Dingdang's voice was powerful and impassioned, causing Yi Xuanji's veins to bulge and his temples to jump. He took a deep breath and loudly shouted, "You were born a member of the Beijing Ye family, and you will die a ghost of the Beijing Ye family. Do you really think that just because you have some ability you can leave the Ye family? Even if you die, don't even think about getting rid of this brand. My life is my own. I am a living person. How can I let you decide?" Yi Dingdang disapprovingly retorted, "My family is unfortunate to have such a rebellious person like you. Today I will purge my family and put righteousness before family. Tianlei, if you don't move, then don't blame father for being ruthless." Yi Tianlei secretly sighed, knowing that today he will completely break off from the Beijing Ye family, and he will not be able to go back, but for his daughter, he will not turn back. He raised his head and looked at Dingdang and said, "I am a father, so I must fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Whoever dares to hurt Dingdang, I will not let them off him." Yi Tianlei's way, and he laughed, Ye good whatever anyway you have left this family for more than 20 years, I will treat you as if I never gave birth to you. Since you to die of. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and thrust it towards Yi Tianlei's chest. Yi Tianlei crossed his fists and met the cold glinting sword. Thunder-rushing fist had no chance of winning against the sword, not to mention the difference between his cultivation and Yi Xuanji's was like heaven and earth. There was no way to cross this gap. Puff. Blood burst out from Yi Tianlei's wrist. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times in pain, but he still did not retreat an inch. He waved his fist and attacked again. Yi Xuanji's eyes were cold, filled with killing intent, and said with disdain, I can give birth to you, give you life, and I can also take your life back. Shwa shwa shwa. With a shake of the sword, a sharp sword flower covered Yi Tianlei's arm, and the sharp edge of the sword caused deep wounds to appear on his arm, with blood flowing out. If this continues, then his two arms will be completely crippled. Yi Dingdang could no longer sit and watch. She jumped and flashed past Yi Tianlei's side, and with a flick of the clear wind sword, she stabbed at him from a strange angle. Yi Xuanji knew the power of the wind-chasing sword art, and with the help of the clear wind sword he could not ignore it. So he had no choice but to give up on Yi Tianlei, and raise his sword to fight with Yi Dingdang. The two sword arts had many similarities, they were both fast and accurate, but it was clear that Yi Dingdang's wind-chasing sword art had the essence of it. Although her cultivation was lower than Yi Tianlei's by a few levels, she was still able to rely on her swordsmanship to not lose. This made Yi Xuanji furious, thinking that if he could learn her wind-chasing sword art, and with the clear wind sword in hand, his strength would definitely increase. At this moment, his heart actually had the thought of stealing it. It was just that Yi Dingdang would rather die than reveal the chasing wind sword technique, which was extremely unfortunate. However, the clear wind sword was also a divine weapon, so stealing it would be extremely good. Yi Dingdang's attack was quite methodical, and she knew when to advance and retreat. Although she was surrounded by dangers, she escaped again and again. But she was very clear that this was only temporary. After a long time, she would definitely lose, and the other party would definitely not be lenient. She would definitely die. However, what was there to fear about death? What she did was not wrong at all. Yi Tianming was not grateful, but he killed her father with enmity. Of course, she would not hesitate to make a move. She did not regret doing so. Yi Ke looked at this scene, but she could not intervene. His martial arts could not be compared with Yi Dingdang's. After all, he did not have the clear wind sword, nor did he have the exquisite martial arts of the wind-chasing sword art. He was not willing to give up. He turned his gaze and stared at Yi Tianlei. He quietly raised his sword and attacked. Yi Tianlei has been nervously looking at his daughter. He almost did not notice this silent attack. He narrowly avoided the sword and looked at Yi Ke incredulously. Yi Ke, Yi Dingdang killed my father, I want to take revenge for my father. Yi Ke clenched her teeth, shwa shwa shwa, she stabbed out a few more times, directly aiming for Yi Tianlei's vitals. Yi Tianlei repeatedly retreated. Yi Tianming's death made him feel guilty. How could he be willing to fight with Yi Ke again, so he retreated again and again. He just avoided and did not fight back. When Yi Ke saw this, she did not stop. Instead, her attacks became more and more fierce, making Yi Tianlei in danger. But Yi Tianlei's martial arts were much higher than his. Although he suffered, Yi Ke could not hurt him. Yi Dingdang struggled, gritted her teeth and sweated, but she did not compromise and beg for mercy. Her energy consumption was quite large, and her movements slowed down involuntarily, becoming more and more dangerous. At the same time, the battle between Tang Zheng and the sword god had entered a white-hot stage. He held the nameless sword in both hands to prevent it from piercing his chest. But the sharp sword chi on the sword made his hand painful. If it was not for the attractive force of the swallowing the sky technique to firmly resist the sword chi, his hand would have been ruined. The two people have been in a stalemate for a long time. The surrounding area was seriously affected and was razed to the ground. In fact, many people understood that the final result of this battle would depend on the outcome of the two people. Suddenly there was a roar, and the sword light of the nameless sword soared. With a bang, Tang Zheng flew out and broke a few trees before stopping. His hands were bloody and the white bones inside could almost be seen. Tang Zheng kept sucking in cold air. Looking at his almost ruined palm, he almost could not recognize it. The sword chi of the nameless sword was too powerful. In the end, the swallowing the sky technique did not suck away the nameless sword. Instead, the nameless sword almost ruined his hands. The sword god suddenly arrived and stood in front of Tang Zheng. He looked at him condescendingly and said, Today I will avenge my disciple. Go to hell. Tang Jing smiled jokingly and said, even now you still don't believe my words. The Song family is the real culprit of Sword 13's death. If they did not avoid it, how could Sword 13 fight with me alone? In order to hide it from you, the Song family did not hesitate to kill all the servants present. You are the Sword God, but in the end you are blinded and confused. The Sword God's eyelids twitched as he shouted, I don't want to listen to your flowery words. The nameless sword slashed down from the sky as fast as lightning. Tang Jing wanted to block it, but he was unable to do so. However, he did not accept his fate. With a thought, a white light flashed, and then a flame soared into the sky and pounced at the Sword God. Whoosh! The nameless sword actually split open the flames and still fell towards Tang Jing's head. It was bound to kill him on the spot. However, Xiao Bai's flames were not to be trifled with. They instantly wrapped around the Sword God and turned into a huge ball of fire. The Sword God had no choice but to retreat. However, the biting cold sword chi had already slashed down. Tang Jing could not dodge and only death awaited him. Boom! With an explosion, the Sword God escaped from the ball of fire. He looked at Tang Jing expectantly. However, the scene of Tang Jing dying was not what he had imagined. He was still alive. The powerful sword chi had already disappeared. Instead, a woman in white appeared in front of Tang Jing. The Sword God's eyes widened. His instincts told him that this woman in white was definitely not simple, but it was not because she was extremely beautiful. The Sword God had never been attracted to beauties. To him they were nothing more than pink skeletons. Although this woman in white was extremely beautiful, she could not shake his will. The only thing that made his heart tremble was that he could not see through this person's depth. She was like a bottomless spring. No matter how hard he tried, he could not see through her. Without a doubt, Tang Jing's narrow escape from death was related to this person. The sword mark asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" The Empyrean fairy did not pay attention to him. Instead, she turned to Tang Jing and said, "Take the 9 transformation soul return pill and your injuries will be healed." Not only did Tang Jing suffer from external injuries, the injuries to his internal organs were also not light. If he were to recuperate normally, he would need 10 days to half a month to recover. After hearing the Empyrean fairy's words, he quickly took out a 9 transformation soul return pill and swallowed it. Immediately, his mangled palms recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. The injuries in his body were also quickly healed. After a while, he was as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. There was not a single injury on him. Tang Jing was in high spirits. This 9 transformation soul return pill was too miraculous. It could revive a dead person and regrow flesh and bones. It was not an exaggeration but a real effect that could be achieved. The sword god did not pay attention to Tang Jing's injuries. He only stared at the Empyrean fairy's back. This person dared to turn her back to him. Didn't this mean that she did not put him in her eyes? In this world, no one had ever dared to treat him, the sword god, so this was the greatest insult to him. He was so angry that he stomped his feet and shouted, "Tell me your name. Who are you?" The sword god had challenged countless experts since the day he made his debut. That was how he became the sword god. However, when facing this woman in white, he did not dare to charge at her directly. There was a faint feeling of fear in his heart. What was going on? Other than facing the High Lords, he had never had such a thought. Could it be that this woman in white was on par with the sect leader? Chapter 825. The Empyrean fairy slowly turned around and calmly looked at the sword god. "You're not my match. I advise you not to make a move. Otherwise you'll be the one to suffer." Her tone was extremely calm, but the words deeply provoked the sword god. He said fiercely, "So young yet so arrogant and conceited." The Empyrean fairy couldn't be bothered to argue. She only glanced at Tang Jing. Seeing that he was fine, she said, "You're not the sword god's match." Tang Jing wasn't discouraged. The sword god was an expert who had been famous for a long time. It was only natural that he wasn't his match. However, he had learned a lot from the battle of life and death just now. The sword god won't give up. "Then I'll leave it to you," Tang Jing said. The Empyrean fairy's lips curled into a smile. "Isn't this bullying?" These words provoked the sword god even more. Even the people in the surroundings had mixed feelings. Some people sucked in cold breaths. They felt that this white-clothed woman didn't know the difference between life and death. Some people stared at her, wondering if she was really hiding her strength. Of course, there were even more people who were subdued by her beauty. This fairy-like appearance and temperament made others feel inferior. They couldn't help but lower their heads. In short, one circle plus. These words stirred up 1,000 waves. Everyone's attention was drawn to this area. Since that's the case, let's see what kind of ability you have. The sword god took a deep breath. The nameless sword blazed with sword light and rushed into the sky. 9 heavens silver fall. The momentum was boundless. It charged forward and viciously chopped down at the Empyrean fairy's head. The Empyrean fairy was unmoved. It was as if she didn't see it at all. She was calm and collected. The sword energy swept out like a raging storm. It arrived above the Empyrean fairy's head in the blink of an eye. The Empyrean fairy didn't even look up. She only raised her arms slightly. With a crisp sound, the Empyrean fairy caught the nameless sword between her slender fingers. All the violent sword chi immediately disappeared, and the nameless sword turned back into an ordinary wooden sword. The sword god's complexion changed greatly, becoming incomparably pale. His peerlessly powerful 9th heaven Milky Way fall was actually so easily broken by her. One move. In just one move he had been defeated. He had been utterly defeated and despaired. The Empyrean fairy looked at the god of swords and asked, "Do you believe me now?" The sword god was silent. Many others were so frightened that they sat on the ground. This scene was too terrifying. The sword god, who was high and mighty in their eyes, was actually unable to withstand a single move from this white-clothed woman. As soon as they exchanged blows, the nameless sword fell into the hands of the woman in white. Who exactly was she? Everyone couldn't help but look at Tang Zheng. Where did he find such a terrifying woman? What was their relationship? Could it be that she was also one of the mistresses in the Golden House? Then Tang Zheng was simply too lucky with women. Everyone had mixed feelings. Some were envious, some were jealous, some were afraid, and so on. But without a doubt they were all deeply shocked. The god of swords did not give up completely. He used all his skills and roared, trying to get the nameless sword out of the 2 unbreakable fingers. Crack. However, the crack on the nameless sword suddenly expanded and spread all over the sword. After a crisp sound, the nameless sword shattered into pieces of wood. The nameless sword was destroyed. The sword god looked at this scene in horror. This was something he had never thought would happen. The nameless sword that had accompanied him for so long and had gone through so many storms of blood was destroyed just like that. Ah! The sword god roared and madly attacked the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy gently pointed with her finger. The moment her fingertip touched the sword god, his body froze. Then, like a kite with a broken string, he flew over the crowd and landed in the forest. Everyone couldn't help but look up at the sword god flying over their heads. Their hearts instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. Their legs went weak and they had the urge to run. The sword god was their greatest support, but now he was defeated by a light finger from the woman in white. They were simply cannon fodder. No matter how many of them there were, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. No one was a fool. They dared to gang up on her because they thought that there was something to be gained. Since there was nothing to gain and their lives were in danger, they naturally wouldn't stay here. Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel emotional. He vaguely felt that the Empyrean fairy's cultivation was even higher than when she was in the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor. This meant that her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds recently. Of course, he didn't know that the Empyrean fairy had been sealed in the mausoleum for more than 1,000 years. After she woke up, her cultivation was sluggish, so she didn't display her true strength in the battle in the mausoleum. Of course, the Qin first emperor also had this problem at that time. That was why Tang Zheng was able to escape from the Qin first emperor's hands and turn the tables. Suddenly, a delicate cry entered Tang Zheng's ears, interrupting his train of thought. He abruptly turned around and saw Yi Dingdang in a precarious situation. He immediately leaped up and charged over, the battle soul sword attacking Yi Xuanji with lightning speed. Seeing Tang Zheng attacking, Yi Xuanji had no choice but to retreat in panic and dodge his attack. Yi Xuanji knew his own limits. He knew that he was no longer a match for Tang Zheng. If he continued to fight, not only would he lose his life, even his Ye family would be completely destroyed here. He unwillingly looked at Yi Dingdang and shouted, "Retreat!" He turned around and ran away without the slightest hesitation. He didn't even leave behind a word or two. Yi Ke finally woke up as if from a dream. He had been entangled with Yi Tianlei for a long time, but Yi Tianlei had been avoiding and not fighting back. He had no chance to kill Yi Tianlei. At this moment, seeing Yi Xuanji escape, his heart was in despair. He knew that if he continued, only death would await him, so he resolutely turned around and ran away. Yi Tianlei looked at him with mixed feelings. He didn't stop him, but he was somewhat disappointed. From now on, he and the capital's Ye family were life and death enemies. The people of the Chu family also wanted to escape, but they were obviously not as lucky as the Ye family. Chu Xiaofeng was already lying in a pool of blood on the ground, and had been stepped on countless times. As for Chu Mingxian, his sunset blade technique had already been broken by Qin Badian and Yan Qishan. Qin Badian punched him in the chest, and his chest instantly caved in, killing him on the spot. At this point, the Chu family's direct line of descent had completely fallen, and the Chu family no longer existed. Seeing this scene, the others ran even more crazily, wanting to escape from this place. Tang Jing did not pay attention to these shrimp soldiers and crab generals, but instead searched for Song Jian'an's figure in the crowd. This time he absolutely could not let this big tiger return to the mountain. Sure enough, when Song Jian'an saw that the sword god had been defeated so cleanly, he actually mixed into the crowd and wanted to quietly escape. Tang Jing snorted coldly, his figure flashed and chased after him, shouting, "Song Jian'an, where are you running to?" Not only did his son die, his grandson was also heavily injured, and now even the sword god that he had invited had been defeated. All of the chips in his hands were gone. Then what right did he have to compete with Tang Jing? Of the 36 stratagems, leaving was the best stratagem. Hearing Tang Jing's shouts from behind him, Song Jian'an was scared out of his wits. He did not even turn his head as he madly ran, trying to escape from Tang Jing's pursuit. However, in front of the shrinking ground into an inch technique, his speed was too slow. In the blink of an eye, Tang Jing had caught up to him and slashed out without hesitation. Tang Jing swallowed the 9 transformation soul recovery pill, his injuries had healed, and his fighting strength had naturally recovered to its peak state. With this slash, the exhausted Song Jian'an was simply unable to block it, and could only subconsciously counterattack. Bang! The sharp edge of the sword landed on his arms, and the bone-deep wounds immediately burst out with blood. Song Jian'an screamed miserably, staggered, and fell to the ground, his face bruised and swollen. He wanted to get up again, but the War Soul sword was already pressed against his chest. He did not dare to move, but he still glared fiercely at Tang Jing, wishing that he could drink his blood and eat his flesh. The famous Song family had actually come to such a state. Song Jian'an had never dreamed that he would be not only depressed, but also filled with hatred. Tang Jing looked at Song Jian'an without batting an eyelid. Although the other party was in a sorry state, he did not have the slightest bit of pity. This was a life-and-death enemy. If he were to pity him, then Tang Jing would be a complete idiot. He would not be so soft-hearted. If not for the Song family repeatedly forcing them, why would the two sides have reached this step? When Yan Padian and the rest saw that Song Jian'an had been captured, they immediately surrounded him and looked at him with mixed feelings. Song Jian'an looked around and roared, "Today, you all relied on the help of a mysterious expert and won for a while. I will definitely get back at you in the future." Song Jian'an was filled with regret. Why didn't he investigate the woman by Tang Jing's side clearly? Silently, such a heaven-defying expert had appeared in the capital. This was the root of their failure. If he had known about the existence of the Empyrean fairy, he would definitely have prepared a countermeasure and would not have been so passive. Tang Jing looked at him with disdain and said, "You still want to get back at me in the future? Dream on. Do you really think you have a chance to escape from me?" Song Jian'an was startled and exclaimed, "You dare to kill me? If you dare to kill me, I naturally dare to kill you. It's true that you're the patriarch of the Song family, but the country has long been afraid of you big families. If you die, the Song family will scatter. Do you think anyone will pursue my responsibility?" Tang Jing asked while beaming. Song Jian'an's heart turned cold. The influence of the few great families was indeed great, and they could even influence the political situation or the formulation of policies. However, relying on their luxuriant foliage and deep-rooted roots, the authorities could not do anything to them. However, he must have hated them to the bones for a long time. He wished that they would all collapse so that the authorities could take over many of their businesses. The existence of the few great clans was a product of history and was not something that happened overnight. However, a great clan would need dozens or hundreds of years to develop and strengthen, but if it was destroyed, it could be done in an instant. This was something that had been proven through historical practice. Song Jian'an was very clear on this point, so the fluke in his heart had already vanished into thin air, and his face was lifeless. Tang Jing did not want to waste words with him and directly said, "You brought all of this upon yourself. If not for your Song family repeatedly trying to kill me, how could I have destroyed your Song family? Go to hell." Puff. Chapter 826. Everyone had different expressions when they saw Song Jinan fall to the ground and die, especially Yen Padian. He had fought with Song Jinan for many years, but he never thought that it would end like this. He secretly rejoiced at how wise his choice was back then. Tang Zheng was indeed worthy of his investment and reliance. After all, he had the help of many mysterious experts. With that thought, Yen Padian subconsciously turned his head to look at the Empyrean fairy. This white-clothed woman's strength was something he had never seen before in his life, and it was ridiculously high. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, it was truly hard for him to imagine. He couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. This world had really changed and he was somewhat unfamiliar with it. Clean up the battlefield. Yen Padian put away his emotions and ordered in an orderly manner. This area was in a mess. Blood was everywhere and there were also many corpses. This time, both sides had suffered casualties, but the enemy's casualties were even heavier, especially those with prominent identities. Tang Jing swept his gaze across the ground and asked, "Where's Song Yu?" "Song Yu? He's gone." Yen Luyun rummaged through the ground but there was no Song Yu at all. Tang Jing's face darkened and said, "He actually escaped. Let's chase after him," Yen Luyun suggested. Tang Jing shook his head. Song Yu was incomparably crafty. Who knows how long he has been running for? It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, so how could he chase after him? However, the Song family was already finished, and Song Yu was a stray dog. As long as he appeared, he would definitely be discovered, so Tang Zheng was not in a hurry. What he was concerned about was the life and death of the sword god. The sword god had flown into the distant forest, and his life and death were unknown. He immediately looked at the Empyrean fairy and asked, "How are the injuries you inflicted on the sword god?" The Empyrean fairy's expression was indifferent as she said, "He will definitely die." Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. Such a simple strike was actually able to kill the sword god without a doubt. How powerful was this confidence and strength? It made people feel ashamed of their inferiority. Tang Zheng believed in the Empyrean fairy's strength, but he wanted to confirm it. "I'll go and take a look." "I'll go with you." Yen Padian impatiently followed. When the two of them arrived at the small forest, it was completely empty. There was only a pool of blood left on the ground. Just now the sword god had fallen here. It seemed like he still had a breath of life left and had desperately escaped. But since the Empyrean fairy had already decided to end his life, Tang Jing did not want to dwell on this issue. Yen Potion's injuries were not heavy. Looking at the blood, he looked around and asked with a sigh, "The insufferably arrogant sword god was defeated so badly. Your friend said that the sword god will definitely die. Do you think that's believable?" Yen Padian did not understand Empyrean fairy's strength, so he asked. Tang Jing nodded solemnly. "Yes." Yen Padian was flabbergasted. The sword god was sentenced to death just like that. He sighed and asked nervously, "May I ask who that white-clothed woman is?" "Her name is Fu Yao and she's my friend. She's staying here temporarily." Fu Yao. Yen Padian firmly remembered this name, but there were no legends about this name in the martial arts world. However, in the future the world would definitely know that the famous sword god was killed by a white-clothed woman. When the two of them returned to the villa, everyone was busy cleaning up the battlefield. With such a huge battle, the police did not come, giving them enough time. Otherwise it would definitely cause panic. Empyrean fairy had already returned to the villa, and the other women carefully walked out. Looking at the mess in front of them, other than Marshall, the others felt their stomachs churn, and had the urge to do evil. "Are you guys all right?" Tang Jing saw their pale faces and hurriedly asked. The few of them stammered and shook their heads, saying that they were fine. Since the Empyrean fairy had pointed out that Tang Jing's intention of leaving them behind was to train them and let them adapt to this kind of scene, naturally no one would back down. Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. The impact of all of this on them was self-evident, but he didn't have any good ideas. He could only use such a crude method to teach them a lesson. "We weren't able to help you." Fang Shishir was the first to reflect on herself in shame. The others were all worried. Tang Jing smiled faintly and said, "There's no need for you to do anything to take care of them." The few of them had resentful expressions on their faces as their gazes involuntarily landed on Yi Dingdong's body. Without a doubt, Yi Dingdong's valiant and heroic appearance had left a deep impression on them, causing them to feel ashamed of their inferiority. Yi Dingdong was also a woman, so how could she be so powerful? Helping Tang Jing? Actually, this was not to say that they were cowards, but rather that the education they received and the environment they grew up in was different. Yi Dingdang was from a martial arts family and had practiced martial arts since she was young. Brandishing blades and guns, fighting and killing was a common thing. Even though Yi Dingdang had never experienced this kind of situation before, she was still able to quickly adapt to it and even burst forth with a brilliant performance. Yi Dingdang walked over, smiled sweetly at Tang Jing and asked naturally and gracefully, "Are you all right?" Tang Jing shook his head. Seeing that there was a lot of blood on her body, his heart tightened and asked, "Are you all right?" Yi Dingdang lowered her head to look at herself and said with a carefree smile, "It's just a superficial wound, not a problem. Besides, a lot of it is the blood of the enemy." Tang Jing breathed a sigh of relief. The other women were endlessly envious, thinking that one day they would also become like her. They had long heard of the complicated relationship between Tang Jing and Yi Dingdang, but now it seemed that they were the ones who were lagging behind. Yi Dingdang was fighting alongside Tang Jing, but they still had to hide in the house and wait for protection. The difference between them was obvious. Many people immediately felt a sense of crisis. "Everyone enter the house first. I'll check everyone's injuries," Tang Jing said. "This injury is nothing much." Almost everyone was injured, it was just a matter of light and heavy, but without a doubt, Yen Potion's injuries were the heaviest. Of course, the sword god's attack was incomparable to others. "Elder Yen, let me check for you inside. Don't refuse," Tang Jing said in a deep voice. Yen Padian helplessly nodded in agreement, and the others also entered the house one after another, leaving their subordinates to busy themselves outside. Fortunately, the villa's living room was big enough so the dozen or so people sitting down did not seem crowded. When they saw the room full of beauties, everyone had different expressions. Yi Tianlei and Feng Xinyang looked at each other, thinking to themselves that this was truly a golden house hiding a beauty. Dingdong's competitive pressure was too great. Yi Dingdang had long known about this, but seeing the other girls return to their own houses, she still had mixed feelings. They all had rooms here but he had nothing. For a moment she couldn't help but feel empty. But soon she changed her mind. This was only temporary. One day she would also move in with her head held high. "Today I have to thank everyone for their help. If it wasn't for all of you, it would be hard for me to imagine what kind of scene it would be." Tang Jing cupped his fists and thanked them politely. Qin Badian was straightforward by nature. He waved his hand and said, "Young Master Tang, you are too courteous, your matter is my matter. If someone in the capital wants to deal with you, how can I just stand by and watch?" Qin Badian had once sworn to protect Tang Jing with his life, so Tang Jing was rather grateful to him and nodded his head heavily to express his gratitude. Yi Tianlei's expression was resentful, pained, and embarrassed. This time he had publicly broken off his relationship with the Ye family in the capital, and in order to protect him, Yi Dingdang had killed Yi Tianming. "Tang Jing, can I ask you for a favor?" Finally Yi Tianlei couldn't help but ask. Tang Jing jumped in fright and said in fear and trepidation, "Uncle Yi, you are asking me too much. If there is anything, just say it, I will definitely do it." Yi Tianlei had done everything he could to help Tang Jing, and Tang Jing was very grateful. Moreover, he had a relationship with Yi Dingdang, so it was reasonable for him to agree to Yi Tianlei's request. "You also saw what happened today. The Ye family, the Song family, and the Chu family worked together to deal with you. Of course, the Ye family is your enemy. If you want to deal with the Ye family, of course there will be no problem, but, after all, I am from the Ye family. Moreover, my elder brother is also dead, and the Ye family has suffered a great loss. It can be considered as a lesson learned. Can you let them off this time?" Yi Tianlei asked nervously. In fact, he was a little embarrassed to make such a request. After all, the Ye family and Tang Jing had completely fallen out, and were enemies of life and death. This request was a little difficult. However, Yi Tianlei had deep feelings for the Ye family. Although the other party was heartless and unjust, he couldn't do that, so he hoped to fight for a chance for them to survive. Especially after he saw how Tang Jing dealt with the Song family. Even Song Jianan couldn't escape death. He was deeply afraid that Tang Jing would take advantage of the victory to pursue and destroy the Ye family in the capital. When he said this, Yi Dingdang was the first to voice her dissatisfaction. She angrily retorted, "Dad, they disregarded our family and wanted to kill you. Is there a need for you to plead for them?" Yi Tianlei said embarrassedly, "But after all, I am from the Ye family." "Humph, you were already expelled from the Ye family back then. After so many years, have they ever cared about you or us? Do we have to be so considerate of them?" Ding dang. Feng Xinyang couldn't stand it anymore. "Stop talking." She knew her husband best. Yi Tianlei was loyal and righteous. Although he had left the Ye family, his feelings were still there. If he didn't plead for mercy for the Ye family, then he wouldn't be the real him. Everyone looked at Tang Jing in unison. The life and death of the Ye family in the capital were all in his hands. How would he choose? Of course, Tang Jing understood the harm of the Ye family. However, Yi Tianlei was pleading for mercy for the Ye family. If he rejected, wouldn't it hurt his feelings? Moreover, Yi Tianlei's identity was special. He had to consider their feelings. After this battle, the Ye family's vitality has been greatly damaged. Although they hate me, they won't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, the Song family will be their example. Tang Jing thought to himself. Suddenly he had a flash of inspiration. He thought of another problem. If the Song family and the Chu family were finished, the government would be very happy. They would be impatient to take over their businesses. Then, of the 4 major families in the capital, only the Ye family and the Yen family would be left. The pressure on the government would be greatly reduced. However, if the Ye family was destroyed, only the Yen family would be left. How would the government deal with the only remaining Yen family? Get rid of them quickly. Tang Jing immediately thought of this word. The government would definitely not allow the situation of the 4 major families to arise again. Therefore, if only the Yen family was left, then they would definitely get rid of them without hesitation. After all, the influence of one family was much smaller. If there was still the Ye family, then the government would definitely be afraid and wouldn't dare to act rashly. Chapter 827. Seeing that everyone was looking at him with burning gazes, Tang Jing muttered to himself, "Uncle Yi has pleaded for mercy, so I will naturally agree. As long as the Ye family in the capital no longer provokes me, I can spare them this time." Hearing that, Yi Tianlei was wild with joy and hurriedly thanked him. "Tang Jing, thank you so much." Although many people thought that this was too risky, Tang Jing had already made his decision, and they could not change it. However, many people were very touched. After all, Tang Jing cared a lot about their feelings, and even took the risk to agree to Yi Tianlei's request. Yi Dingdang was indignant. She wanted to say something but hesitated, but looking at her father's expression, she swallowed her complaints back into her stomach. "Elder Yen, let me check your injuries first." Seeing that Yen Padian was exhausted, Tang Jing hurriedly placed his hands on his wrist, and his heart could not help but tremble. In the battle with the sword god, Elder Yen was severely injured, and it was mainly internal injuries. If he was not careful, it would affect his future cultivation. This injury was caused by him, so Tang Jing naturally could not stay out of it. Thus, he took out a 9 transformation soul return pill and said, "Elder Yen, after consuming this pill, your injuries will be fine." The 9 transformation soul return pill was extremely precious, but in order to treat Elder Yan's injuries, he would not be stingy. Yen Padian had just witnessed the effects of the 9 transformation soul return pill with his own eyes. TSK, he subconsciously looked at Tang Jing's hands, which had long since recovered to its original state. He understood that this was a healing panacea and said excitedly, "My injuries will be fine after recuperating for a period of time. This medicine is too precious." Yen Padian had an extremely good relationship with the King of Medicine, but he had never seen the King of Medicine concoct such a pill, so he guessed that it must have been concocted by Tang Jing using a cultivator's methods. Tang Jing shook his head. "This medicine is used to treat injuries. Although it is precious, it is not a problem. Elder Yen, please do not decline." Then, "All right." Yen Padian happily took it and swallowed it. Immediately, a strong vitality burst forth from the pill, and his internal injuries were quickly healed. Even the small wounds on his body were healed. He personally felt the miraculous effects of this medicine and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He exclaimed, "This is too mysterious." He stood up and moved his muscles and bones. He actually felt that his condition was better than before the battle. Moreover, that powerful vitality had caused many changes to his body. He was already old, and his bodily functions were deteriorating little by little. However, that vitality changed the situation, allowing his body to return to its middle-aged state. "Tang Jing, thank you so much." He couldn't help but grab Tang Jing's hand and nodded his thanks. Tang Jing faintly smiled. The 9 transformation soul restoration pill was far too rare, or else he would have gifted everyone one. "Elder Yen, you were injured because of me. This is what I should do." Actually, I still took advantage of you this time. Although I put in a lot of effort, my gains are far greater than this." Yen Padian said sincerely. He was already old and his bodily functions had deteriorated severely. Although he was already a grandmaster martial artist, it was extremely difficult for him to advance any further. His cultivation showed signs of stagnation. However, after consuming the 9 transformation soul restoration pill, his bodily functions had almost recovered to his middle-aged state, and the cultivation shackles had been broken. Naturally, he had the chance to break through to a higher level of cultivation. Furthermore, the mysterious energy that Tang Jing had injected into his body had caused his dragon form technique to advance by leaps and bounds. This was something that he did not even dare to think about, so this time he could be considered to have gained a lot. When everyone heard this, they looked at Yen Padian suspiciously, guessing that his so-called harvest was probably the pill from before. They couldn't help but envy him. This time we have won a great victory. The Song and Chu families are almost finished. Therefore, we have to discuss how to seize more benefits for ourselves as quickly as possible. They are like 2 elephants. No matter how much we eat, they will benefit us greatly. Tang Jing said in a deep voice. After the battle was over, they would naturally share the benefits. Taking advantage of the fact that the authorities had yet to fully react, they had to seize this opportunity to fight for more benefits for themselves. Otherwise, the opportunity would be fleeting. At that time, everything would belong to the country, and it would be impossible for them to obtain benefits from it. Everyone's expression immediately became excited, especially Yen Qishan and Qin Badian. The Yen family was the strongest family to begin with, and if they were to take another step forward, their strength would reach another level. As for Qin Badian, his strength was not weak either, but compared to the other great families he was still lacking. With this opportunity, the Qin family would truly rise, and perhaps a new family would be born. This matter was simply a miracle to him. Of course, Qin Badian was also an ambitious person. He had always had a dream in the depths of his heart, and that was to personally create a Qin family like the other great families, and pass it down from generation to generation. However, his foundation was not enough and his strength was still shallow. All of this was just a daydream. Now, it seemed that all of this was not an illusion. Under the influence of Tang Jing, all of this was approaching him at a fast pace. Both the Song and Chu families fell in your hands, so of course all of these benefits belong to you. Yen Padian said magnanimously. The 9 transformation soul return pill and the dragon chi had already allowed him to reap a lot of benefits. He was not greedy, so he took the initiative to give up this portion of the benefits. Tang Jing shook his head. This is the result of everyone's joint efforts, so everyone deserves it, so don't refuse. Tang Jing, you are generous, so if we continue to decline, it will seem like we are being overly sentimental. However, the majority of it is naturally yours, and your company is rapidly rising. With these resources, you can develop even faster and become even stronger. Yen Padian said. Tang Jing did not decline pretentiously and nodded in agreement. However, all of this was a business operation and he was not familiar with it, so he handed it all over to Mu Hongyan. As a result, a few forces immediately told him to operate, dividing up the Song and Chu families. Tang Jing, there is one more thing that I must remind you of. Since you all say that the sword god will definitely die, but he is after all the leader of the sword pavilion, and this matter is of great importance. I wonder what kind of power he has behind him, and the death of the sword god is not the end, but the entire body is affected. I wonder how many more things will happen, so you have to be on guard against them. Yen Padian was very experienced, he could see through the essence of the matter with a single glance and warned solemnly. Tang Jing nodded his head. He knew more than Yen Padian, and knew that behind the sword pavilion was the Azure Dragon Palace. He had no choice but to think about how this mysterious power and the mysterious High Lord would react. If the Azure Dragon Palace were to make things difficult for him, how should he deal with it? He subconsciously looked towards the Empyrean Fairy's room. Without a doubt, he had no choice but to place his hopes on the Empyrean Fairy, but what if the Empyrean Fairy left him in the future? Therefore, forging iron required one's own strength. The safest way was to continue to raise one's own strength. Everyone followed his gaze and looked towards the tightly shut door. They knew that the white-clothed woman who had killed the sword god was inside. Without a doubt, the appearance of the Empyrean Fairy was one of the biggest shocks of the day, allowing them to truly understand what it meant by there was always someone better than them. Yen Padian had been suppressing his curiosity and did not ask, but Feng Xinyang's fiery personality could not help but ask directly, "Little handsome brother, who exactly is that lady?" Even Tang Jing himself was not clear about the origins of the Empyrean Fairy, and said honestly, "Aunt Feng, I really don't know where she came from, she is only temporarily staying here. As for her cultivation, even I am not clear. In short, she is very powerful." Feng Xinyang curled his lips and said, "I wonder where you found such a powerful girl." Feng Xinyang could not help but feel that the pressure of her daughter's competition was too great. Of course, she mistakenly thought that the Empyrean fairy was also Tang Zheng's confidant. Seeing that Tang Zheng could not say anything, everyone was preparing to leave. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he looked out the door, his eyelids twitching. Someone's coming. Yan Padian also looked out the door at the same time and exclaimed. Seeing that everyone was nervous, Tang Zheng waved his hand, indicating that everyone should not worry. He walked out and saw a person walking into the courtyard in the blink of an eye. The person who came looked around the battlefield. Many people were still busy cleaning up the battlefield. The corpses had already been moved away, but the ground was still a mess. He slightly frowned, looked at Tang Zheng and then looked at the people around him and said, Tang Zheng, come with me. Number 2. Tang Zheng and Yan Padian exclaimed at the same time. This person was the chief's personal guard. Number 2, a mysterious person who would not easily appear. Yan Padian had only met him once many years ago. Tang Zheng knew number 2, so he naturally knew that his identity was special. The others were confused. Who was this person? Why was his name so strange, called number 2? Number 2's tone was old-fashioned and stiff, making people feel a bit hostile. Feng Xinyang was eager to protect her child. She directly stood in front of Tang Zheng and said, Little handsome brother, this person is not simple, be careful. Tang Zheng nodded lightly and said to number 2, May I ask what's the matter? You've caused such a huge disaster this time and you still dare to ask about it? Number 2's tone was not good. What Tang Zheng had done this time was indeed out of his expectations. After all, he had just gotten rid of Xing Feng a while ago, which made the authorities extremely dissatisfied. However, it had only been a few days and he had done such a huge thing right under their noses. How could it not be shocking? Tang Zheng expected that the authorities would find him sooner or later, but he did not expect their reaction to be so fast. He pointed to the battlefield and said indifferently, This is not what I thought and is not under my control. You saw it too, this is my residence, someone is trying to do something to me, I am only trying to protect my life and counterattack. After all, this was the capital and the authorities were extremely powerful. Tang Zheng naturally could not cause their counterattack, otherwise things would be terrible. That was why he gave an explanation. It's useless for you to say this to me. Let's talk about it when we get there. Number 2 did not appreciate his kindness and continued to speak coldly. We can't go, we're not friendly. Feng Xinyang advised and the others also nodded in agreement. Only Yan Padian had a serious expression and reminded him, I'm afraid number 2 is passing on that person's words. I know, I'll go with him. Don't worry, this is within my expectations. You guys should hurry up and implement what we just discussed. There's not much time left. Tang Zheng warned. Yan Padian immediately understood that the authorities would definitely interfere and had to act before them. Thus, he entrusted him with the task, then you should be more careful. Chapter 828. Sword God slowly woke up and saw that he was lying in a broken room. There was a person squatting not far away. His clothes were stained with blood and his head was buried in his knees as he squatted on the ground. Sword God placed his hands on the ground and tried to stand up, but he felt his body go soft. With a putong sound he fell to the ground again. That person was suddenly startled like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. His eyes were filled with fear and his handsome appearance had long been replaced by fear. This person was the escaped Song Yu. Master. Seeing Sword God wake up, Song Yu quickly came over and supported Sword God. Sword God was injured and his aura was weak. He was just like an ordinary old man. He was still holding half of the nameless sword and a large part of his chest was caved in. His face was pale and his aura was weak. The Sword God raised his eyelids. When he saw Song Yu, his expression was particularly complicated. This time, the Song family had an unavoidable responsibility for the failure of the mission. Towards Song Yu he naturally would not be amiable. He coldly said, Where are we? Master, I saved you. We have already escaped from that place. This is a rural area in the suburbs. No one can find us. Young Master Song would never set foot in this kind of dirty and messy place before. However, in order to escape he had no choice but to come here. Where are the others? Sword God asked. Song Yu's eyes turned red and he began to cry, Wu Master, my grandfather and father are both dead. The others either died or escaped. I don't know. This time he came to kill Tang Zheng with full confidence. He never expected that things would turn out like this. He was completely defeated and even Sword God was heavily injured. Sword God's expression darkened. Without a doubt, this was the most miserable time since he started cultivating. However, when he saw Song Yu, who was usually insufferably arrogant, crying like a woman, Sword God Wuming was furious. He shouted angrily, "You're a man, yet you're crying like a woman." Song Yu's crying stopped abruptly as she looked at the Sword God in silence. If it weren't for your Song family, how could I have become like this?" The sword deity was furious. Song Yu immediately buried her head in her chest, but her hands were clenched into fists. Her family was ruined and her master still wanted to blame her. It was too much. However, the Sword God's prestige was deeply rooted in his heart, so he didn't dare to refute. If he wanted revenge, he could only rely on the Sword God, so he said, "Shizuan, are we going to give up just like that? Not only did he hurt you, but he also destroyed my family. We must take revenge." Cough cough. The God of Swords coughed violently and said weakly, "Revenge, of course we have to take revenge." However, his eyes dimmed. These two words were easy to say, but it was extremely difficult to carry out. The God of Swords was very clear about his own injuries and knew that he would not live for long. He had no idea who that white-clothed woman was, and he was afraid that even the High Lord did not know. This matter was too big and he had no choice but to take it seriously. He was anxious to pass this information back, but he couldn't hold on until he returned to Sword Pavilion. But before he died, he had to figure out one thing, and that was the truth behind Sword 13's death. Originally, he didn't believe what Tang Jing said, but things were different now. When he recalled the scene at that time, he couldn't help but have doubts. Tang Jing had the white-clothed woman's help, so there was no need to fabricate a lie. Moreover, the Song family's reaction was too intense and too strange. Now that he thought about it, there were many things that didn't make sense. Sword 13 was his most valued disciple. Even if he didn't have long to live, he still wanted to figure out the ins and outs of the matter. "Disciple, let me ask you something. You must tell me honestly," the God of Swords asked in a deep voice. Song Yu's heart thumped as she had a bad premonition. She asked nervously, "What is it?" The God of Swords looked at Song Yu with a burning gaze. Although he didn't have long to live, his gaze was as sharp as the edge of a sword. Song Yu still couldn't look straight at him. He asked firmly, "How did your eldest senior brother, Sword 13, die?" Song Yu panicked and said hesitantly, "Master, didn't you already know that eldest senior brother? Wasn't he killed by Tang Jing?" "Is that so?" the God of Swords asked. "This." Song Yu panicked and hesitated for a long time before nodding hesitantly, "Yes." Nonsense. Although the God of Swords and Song Yu hadn't been together for a long time, he still understood him. Looking at him like this, how could he not know that he was lying? Immediately he believed what Tang Jing said. The death of his eldest disciple was probably related to the Song family. "Do you still want to hide it? Raise your head and look into my eyes. Tell me, is what Tang Jing said true? You didn't come out and let Sword 13 go out alone?" the God of Swords asked fiercely. Song Yu was so scared that her soul was about to fly away. She knelt on the ground and cried, "Yes." The God of Swords' eyes widened. His breathing quickened and he coughed non-stop. So this was the reason for the death of his eldest disciple. The Song family hid and pushed Sword 13 out. Although Sword 13's attainments in swordsmanship were extremely high, he had one thing in common with the God of Swords, and that was that he loved the sword as if he was infatuated. He wasn't very smart about the ways of the world, so he was tricked by the Song family. "Master Yu, what's wrong?" Seeing that the God of Swords was coughing non-stop, Song Yu hurriedly asked. The God of Swords finally stopped coughing. He looked fiercely at Song Yu and said, "I really regret taking you in as my disciple. Your Song family actually caused the death of Sword 13. The Song family brought all of this upon themselves. If I wasn't injured, I'm afraid that just because of this, I wouldn't have let your Song family have an easy time." The God of Swords hated evil as if it was his enemy, and didn't give Song Yu any face at all. Song Yu was shocked. If the God of Swords wanted to destroy the Song family, even if there were 10 Song family members, they wouldn't be his match. Immediately, Song Yu's heart was filled with anger. She couldn't help but clench her fists even tighter. She also gritted her teeth, and a faint killing intent flashed in her eyes. But he didn't dare do anything. The reputation of the God of Swords had long since been deeply ingrained in his bones. He didn't dare offend his superior at all. "Master, calm your anger. We had no choice but to do this. If it wasn't for Tang Jing pressuring us step by step, we wouldn't have done this." Song Yu took a deep breath, suppressed the hundreds and thousands of twists and turns in her heart, and explained pitifully. This is the people of your large families. All of them are sinister and cunning. They only know how to sacrifice others to protect themselves. They're extremely despicable. The God of Swords had an extremely deep relationship with Sword 13's master and disciple, and he still continued to rattle on angrily. Song Yu's expression became extremely unsightly. She was submissive and didn't know how to reply. After a long time, the God of Swords' anger calmed down slightly, and he said, "Raise your head, look at me and listen to my orders." Song Yu raised her head nervously, and she was shocked when she saw that the God of Swords' face had become even paler, as if he was a dead person. The God of Swords trembled as he took out a command token from his bosom, and he said, "Return to the Sword Pavilion and bring this command token to your second senior brother. Tell him that from now on, he's the successor of the Sword Pavilion, and he must lead the Sword Pavilion to develop and strengthen step by step." Song Yu was dumbstruck as he looked at the command token. He recognized that this was the command token of the Master of the Sword Pavilion. With this command token, everyone in the Sword Pavilion had to listen to his orders. Master actually wants to pass the position to second senior brother. Could it be that his injuries? Song Yu was shocked in her heart, and she looked at the God of Swords with a burning gaze, and she felt that his condition was extremely bad. So she probed, "Master, you're still alive, so why are you passing the position to second senior brother? With your leadership, our Sword Pavilion can become even stronger." The God of Swords' eyes dimmed and he sighed, "I can't hold on anymore. That white-clothed woman is too powerful. That attack directly cut off my vitality. If it wasn't for my profound cultivation, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to hold on until now." Song Yu's face changed. "She's that powerful?" "Yes, she's too powerful. When you return, you must tell this news to the Honorable Lord. You must ask the Honorable Lord to pay attention to this person," the God of Swords urged. "Honorable Lord?" Song Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had only heard of the Honorable Lord's name, but he had never seen him in person. But he knew that this person was the person behind the Sword Pavilion, and everyone in the Sword Pavilion, including the God of Swords, had to listen to his orders. So, Song Yu was both curious and in awe of the Honorable Lord. There was actually someone in this world that could make the God of Swords bow to him. Just how powerful was this person? Song Yu couldn't imagine. Yes, although you haven't seen the Honorable Lord before, you will definitely have the opportunity to see him when you return this time. You must be respectful to the Honorable Lord, and you must carry out any orders of the Honorable Lord. Do you hear me? Yes. Master, you really can't hold on anymore? Yes, I can't hold on anymore. I never thought that I would end up like this after roaming unhindered for my entire life. The God of Swords sighed and took out another sword manual. On the cover, the words "Ninth Heaven Galaxy Fall" were written. Song Yu's heart jumped wildly. He was very clear that this was the most powerful sword technique that his master was most proud of. He had relied on this sword technique to win against Tang Zheng. Could it be that master wanted to pass the sword technique down to him? Song Yu's little heart was incomparably excited, and his face flushed red. Unexpectedly, the God of Swords' next sentence caused his heart to fall to the bottom of the valley, and his face immediately froze. "Give this Ninth Heaven Galaxy Fall sword technique to your second senior brother. There are many of my comprehensions of sword techniques in it. Let your second senior brother properly comprehend and cultivate it, and strive to achieve great success as soon as possible." "It's not for me?" Song Yu asked in disappointment. Your Song family caused the death of Sword 13, and I was also implicated because of this. Do you still want me to pass down my lifelong knowledge to you?" Wishful thinking. The God of Swords reprimanded mercilessly. Normally he would also reprimand his disciples like this, and no one dared to talk back. Therefore this habit had been formed, and even if his life was hanging by a thread, he could not change it. Song Yu was furious and thought to himself, "You're already at death's door, and you still want to reprimand me like this? Moreover, you're so biased, giving everything to second senior brother, and I have nothing. Unfair, unfair." He shouted in his heart, and his expression became extremely unsightly. The God of Swords looked at him suspiciously and asked, "Did you hear what I said? Give everything to your second senior brother." Song Yu suddenly roared and said, "If I give him everything, then what do I have? I'm not your messenger. I didn't punish you, and that's already considering our relationship as master and disciple. Do you still want to ask for more?" The God of Swords flew into a rage. "Ah, you're about to die, and only I know what you said. I said that I'm the next master of the Sword Pavilion, and second senior brother, "Humph, you can only listen to my orders." Song Yu suddenly laughed, and the madness in his eyes was difficult to conceal. The god of swords' heart thumped and said, "You dare not listen to my orders? This is deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors." "Ah, you're already at death's door, so what if I deceive my master and destroy your ancestors? Since you've said so, then I'll let you experience what it means to truly deceive your master and destroy your ancestors." Song Yu's killing intent erupted, and he suddenly grabbed the god of swords' neck, and used all his strength to choke him. "You evil disciple, deceiving your master and destroying your ancestors." The god of swords was already at the end of his life, and he was unable to catch his breath. He struggled weakly for a few times, and his eyes were wide open as he breathed his last. Chapter 829. Tang Jing once again stepped into the courtyard house that represented power, and many auras in the dark firmly locked onto him. It was clear that his actions this time had caused the officials to be even more fearful. He walked in casually, but this time he did not go to the study. Instead he went to the living room. Even number 2 did not leave. He stood respectfully behind the bureau chief. As for those auras in the dark, they did not disappear. They were obviously guarding against him. His actions had completely exceeded the control of the government. They had to be on guard. The bureau chief's face was gloomy, as if dark clouds were pressing down on the sky. He looked at Tang Jing sternly and said, "You really can't stop for even a day. This time, even the Song and Chu families have fallen in your hands." The other party went straight to the point. Tang Jing did not beat around the bush and said directly, "The bureau chief is very observant. Naturally, you know what happened this time. I am at home. These people came to kill me. I can't just stretch my neck and ask them to do it, right?" "Humph, didn't you promise me that you will not stir up trouble in Beijing?" the bureau chief questioned. Tang Jing said calmly, "I didn't stir up trouble. I had no choice." "Whatever you say makes sense. Whether it makes sense or not, the bureau chief will judge. Moreover, the biggest beneficiary of this incident is the country, isn't it?" Tang Jing asked with a smile. The bureau chief was stunned and fell silent. This sentence hit the nail on the head. Although the bureau chief was very angry with Tang Jing's actions, he also understood that this was very beneficial to the country. They had long wanted to deal with the big families. However, the government could not act without restraint. Because of this, they did not dare to take action. "I did what the country could not do. I am a meritorious person," Tang Jing joked. The bureau chief snorted and said, "Meritorious person? Humph, do you know how serious the consequences are?" "Is it really that serious?" "I believe that the country will definitely find a way to calm the situation and maximize its own benefits." Tang Jing went straight to the point. Every sentence hit the nail on the head, making the bureau chief very passive. The bureau chief understood that he had seen everything clearly, so he couldn't do anything even if he wanted to. Although his words were full of arrogance, he wouldn't fly into a rage just because of that. In fact, in retrospect, Tang Jing's series of actions were not harmful to the country at all. Instead, he helped the country eliminate a threat. However, he was free and undisciplined in his actions, which gave the chief a headache. The chief wanted to use this opportunity to teach him a lesson so that he wouldn't cause any more trouble. "You sure have a glib tongue. You make it sound so easy." The bureau chief still didn't give him a good look. "Not to mention the Song and Chu families, even the sword god was defeated by you. Who exactly is that woman in white and what is her relationship with you?" This was the main point. There was a super expert like the white-clothed woman in the capital, which made him feel uneasy. He also wanted to see the face of the heroine, but his subordinates kept dissuading him. Finally he gave up the idea. Even the sword god wasn't a match for the white-clothed woman. If she was brought here, even if there were hidden experts protecting her, the bureau chief would still be in danger. Therefore they couldn't let the bureau chief take the risk. However, finding out the background of the white-clothed woman was a top priority. After all, there was such a powerful person hidden in the capital, which was a hidden danger. Tang Jing was very meticulous. Seeing the bureau chief take the initiative to mention the Empyrean fairy, he understood his worries. However, the Empyrean fairy's background was mysterious, and it was related to Qin Shi Huang. Of course he couldn't tell the truth. Therefore he pondered for a moment and said, "This person's name is Fu Yao. I met her by accident. As for her background, she always kept it a secret, so I don't know." Seeing him evade everything, how could the bureau chief easily believe him? His face darkened and said, "She lives in your house and helped you fight off the enemy." You say you don't know her background. Hehe, do you think you are lying to a 3-year-old child? Tang Zheng's expression didn't change. He said unmoved, I really don't know. As for why she lives in my house, maybe it's because we are both cultivators. The Empyrean fairy's identity as a cultivator wasn't a secret. Therefore he admitted it without hesitation. You are not the only cultivator in this world. Why doesn't she live in someone else's house but yours? The bureau chief asked. Tang Jing shrugged, I don't know about that. Seeing that he wasn't afraid of boiling water, the bureau chief couldn't do anything. He couldn't force him. However, the bureau chief didn't give up and continued to ask, what is her cultivation level? Tang Jing sighed and said, I really don't know. This was the truth. He also wanted to know the Empyrean fairy's cultivation level. However, she didn't tell him. He couldn't do anything about it. The bureau chief raised his thick eyebrows and said angrily, You don't know anything. What do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. I just want to live a quiet life. The bureau chief was very dignified, but he couldn't oppress Tang Zheng. The bureau chief's breathing also became hurried. This time he specially invited Tang Zheng here. Other than to beat him up, the most important reason was to find out more about the woman in white. Now he only knew that she was called Fu Yao. He didn't know anything else. This made him very depressed and angry. However, facing Tang Zheng, no matter how angry he was, he couldn't vent it. He was like a ball of cotton. When he punched him, he was soft and didn't have any place to exert force. The bureau chief stared at Tang Zheng. Seeing that his expression was as calm as a rock, he knew that he couldn't get anything out of him. Therefore he changed the topic and said, The sword god was defeated. He definitely won't let this go. How are you going to deal with this? I have to correct you. The sword god wasn't defeated. He was seriously injured and will definitely die. Tang Zheng corrected him. What, the sword god will definitely die? The bureau chief's eyelids twitched. He held the armrest of the chair with both hands and almost stood up in shock. Number 2 was also shocked. He looked at Tang Zheng in disbelief. However, looking at his calm and confident expression, it was obvious that he wasn't lying. Tang Zheng had already expected their reaction. After all, the sword god was famous, so he didn't think that he would die so easily. He lightly nodded his head. Yes, this is Fu Yao's judgment. I believe in her judgment. She killed the sword god so easily. The bureau chief was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Tang Jing nodded heavily. The bureau chief should know that the Azure Dragon Palace is behind the sword god. This is the target we need to guard against. The Azure Dragon Palace has always been mysterious. The Azure Dragon Palace. The bureau chief's eyes twitched. Although the Azure Dragon Palace is mysterious, they abide by the rules, unlike you who always break the rules. Haha, does the Azure Dragon Palace really abide by the rules? I don't think so. Tang Jing smiled disapprovingly. Since the country is so afraid of the big clans, isn't it worried about the Azure Dragon Palace? The martial arts organization, Li Palace, and the Azure Dragon Palace were 3 big mysterious organizations. If they caused trouble, it would be extremely dangerous. They were the ones the country should be wary of. However, the country had always let them do as they pleased. This made Tang Zheng somewhat suspicious. You think the Azure Dragon Palace will come to the capital to avenge the sword god? The bureau chief asked. I can't rule out this possibility. Tang Zheng stared at the bureau chief with a burning gaze. When that time comes, I'm afraid the world will really turn upside down. If the Azure Dragon Palace came to avenge him, Tang Zheng would of course use all his skills and fight to the death. When that time comes, the battle wouldn't be as simple as this one. The momentum would definitely be greater, and the range of influence would be wider. The shock and impact on the ordinary people would also be greater. Moreover, for something like this to happen in the capital, it wouldn't be a glorious thing for the country. Tang Zheng made it clear in advance so that the government wouldn't think that it was all his fault. You don't have to worry about this. If the Azure Dragon Palace dares to come to the capital, then we naturally won't sit idly by. The bureau chief said solemnly. Tang Zheng looked at him suspiciously. Could it be that the country had some method to deal with the Azure Dragon Palace? But even if he asked, the other party definitely wouldn't say it out loud. He simply didn't ask and said, that's for the best. As long as the Azure Dragon Palace didn't come to the capital, then the woman by his side would at least be safe. If there's nothing else, then I'll take my leave. Tang Jing said. The bureau chief looked at him sternly and said, calm down. If you continue to cause trouble, it won't be so easy to get away with it. Tang Jing understood that if it wasn't for the fact that the country could profit from this and didn't harm the government's interests, it wouldn't be so easy for Tang Jing to escape so easily. In short, Tang Jing's actions didn't touch the country's bottom line. In fact, the country even profited from it. This was the reason why the balance between the two sides wasn't broken. Number 2 sent Tang Jing away. The bureau chief returned to the study. There was a person sitting lazily on the chair wearing a mask, the Lord of the Azure Dragon Palace. He was actually also in the capital. If Tang Jing knew, he would definitely be very surprised and even afraid. If the Lord of the Azure Dragon Palace had participated in this battle, the outcome would have been uncertain. The bureau chief looked at the Lord with shining eyes and said, "The sword god is already dead." The Lord's eyes flickered slightly, but he said calmly, "The sword god was only one step away from the martial king realm, but he stopped here." "What a pity. Aren't you surprised and angry?" the bureau chief asked curiously. The Lord said indifferently, "I'm a little surprised. I didn't expect that without Tian Chanzi by his side, Tang Jing would have the help of a woman in white. I'm afraid he didn't tell you who she was, right?" "You guessed correctly. He's tight-lipped. It's not easy to get information from him." The bureau chief paused. "But why didn't you make a move this time? How can a mere Song family be worthy of me making a move? Moreover, this time was also out of my expectations." "Haha, there are times when you make a mistake," the bureau chief said with interest. "You lost such a great general. What are you going to do?" The Lord smiled meaningfully and didn't answer. "No matter what your reaction is, the capital is the center of the country. The eyes of the whole world are watching here. There can't be a big mess, understand?" the bureau chief said in a deep voice. The Lord looked at him deeply and said, "You want me to wait for Tang Jing to leave the capital before killing him?" Chapter 830. The bureau chief looked deeply at the Lord and said, "Don't tell me you won't take revenge for the sword god?" The Lord did not answer but instead asked, "Tang Jing has helped you a lot, why do you want to get rid of him?" The bureau chief's mood was very complicated. Tang Jing had repeatedly violated his will, and was a restless chess piece. Furthermore, he was getting stronger and stronger and gradually got out of his control. If this kind of person was used well, it would be of great benefit. If not, it would be bad or even backfire. This time he destroyed the Song and Chu families, and his power would definitely increase greatly. It was unknown whether he would follow in the footsteps of the other big families and develop into a new family. As a superior, he naturally had to guard against such a situation. Therefore, the bureau chief's heart was very conflicted. Seeing that the Lord went straight to the point, he muttered, "Tang Jing is still a good young man, I am worried that you will kill him." The Lord smiled mysteriously, "You don't have to worry, he can't die yet, he is of great use." The bureau chief raised his eyebrows and said, "What's the use?" The Lord was silent. Seeing that he couldn't get an answer, the bureau chief said, "It's good that you don't touch him, then you can live in peace." "Live in peace." The Lord smiled meaningfully, his figure flashed and suddenly disappeared from the study room. The bureau chief looked at the empty study room, lowered his head and fell into deep thought. In the following period of time, the capital was calm, and Tang Jing's forces quickly divided up the forces of the Song and Chu families. However, the official reaction was also very fast, and within a few days, they also began to collect the remaining forces of the two families on a large scale. Tang Jing's side chose to withdraw, but they had already eaten their fill and had reaped a lot of benefits. Song Yu disappeared and never appeared in the capital again. As for Tang Jing's name, many people wanted to hug his thigh, but they had no way to do so. The Ye family had lost Yi Tianming, and their forces had suffered a setback. They were even more cautious, and even Yi Xuanji had become a person who did not leave the house. The Ye family's business was gradually handed over to Yi Ku to manage. It was unknown if it was because Yi Meiyu was frightened, but she actually began to restrain herself. She did not dare to mix around with her scoundrels, and her romantic affairs decreased by a lot. Smart people could tell at a glance that the Ye family was already going downhill. The Yin family was already strong, and now they were like a tiger that had grown wings. They were thousands of miles away from the Ye family. Another one that attracted the attention of many was Qin Badian. Qin Badian was originally a rising star of the younger generation, but there was still a large gap between him and the other major clans. But this time around he took advantage of the situation to rise up and had a close relationship with Tang Jing, causing many people to be jealous. Why didn't they have such good foresight, placing their chips on Tang Jing so early? Now it was time for them to reap the rewards. As for Tang Zheng's company, it was even more successful. It was developing extremely quickly in various fields, and its layout was becoming more and more grand. Even Tang Linger benefited a lot from it, and directly acted as the female lead of a TV series with a huge investment. Tang Zheng had nothing to do, so he had been cultivating at home. After all, he had gained a lot of insights from this battle. As for the others, they were even more so, as they worked even harder in their cultivation. Half of the energy in the spar had already been absorbed by Tang Zheng. The innate qi in his body had become more and more vigorous, and his cultivation had increased greatly. But his quiet days were quickly broken. Yan Luyun called and said that someone had actually invited him, and asked young Master Yan to pass the message. This person was naturally not an ordinary person. Ji Wuxiang. When Yan Luyun said this name, Tang Zheng was secretly shocked. Although he had only met Ji Wuxiang once, he had a deep impression of him. Logically speaking, he also owed Ji Wuxiang a favor, so he naturally could not refuse this invitation. This time, the location of the meeting was not Ji Wuxiang's high-class club, but a Go club. Tang Zheng was not a Go lover, so when he saw this Go club, he could not help but be stunned. There was actually a private Go club nowadays, so he was afraid that this was definitely a business that was losing money. Yan Luyun seemed to have seen through his thoughts and explained, "It is said that Ji Wuxiang is a Go lover, and this Go club has specially trained a group of Go players. It is said that there are many experts among them, and Ji Wuxiang himself is even at the level of a national master." Tang Zheng suddenly understood. With Ji Wuxiang's wealth and status, not to mention a Go club, even if there were 10 Go clubs, it would not be a problem for him to pay for his hobby. The Go club did not occupy a large area, and its appearance was like a Go piece. It was very exquisite, and it was quiet in the midst of chaos, with an elegant artistic conception. Ji Wuxiang quickly walked out to welcome him. He still had an ordinary appearance, and he looked like he would not be found in a crowd. It was a strong contrast to his identity. "Young Master Tang, please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Ji Wuxiang courteously welcomed him. Yan Luyun glanced at Tang Zheng. On the way here, the two of them had been speculating about the true purpose of Ji Wuxiang's invitation. In the end, Yan Luyun concluded that it was Tang Zheng's recent actions that had piqued his interest. It must be known that Ji Wuxiang had never taken the initiative to invite any of the previous great clans. This time, Tang Zheng had received such a courteous reception, which was unprecedented. This showed that Ji Wuxiang valued Tang Zheng even more than the previous great clans. But when they thought about it, Tang Zheng had stirred up the pool of water in the capital after entering it. Within a year, the situation in the capital had changed greatly, causing two great clans to be completely eliminated. To many people, this was simply impossible, but Tang Zheng had made the impossible possible. Could be called a miracle. As for Ji Wuxiang's true purpose, they still could not guess it. They could only take it one step at a time. Tang Zheng cupped his fists and said, "Manager Ji is too kind. Young masters, please follow me. The Go Club is simple and crude, so please don't mind it." Ji Wuxiang led the way in front. Yan Luyun chuckled and said, "Manager Ji, if your Go Club is considered simple and crude, then we are living in a thatched hut. Young Master Yan is joking. This Go Club is where I usually go when I like to be quiet. It's just that I don't know if we have neglected the two of you by meeting here." Ji Wuxiang said courteously. Tang Zheng lightly said, "Manager Ji is too polite. I am a boor and know nothing about Go, but I can still see that this place is not ordinary. It has really opened my eyes." As they chatted, the three of them arrived at a large hall. There were many Go players sitting there. They were all focused on playing Go and did not notice the three of them at all. Although Tang Zheng did not know much about Go, he could feel a killing intent from the Go board and could not help but be attracted. The Go players played very quickly and the game had many changes. The killing intent was awe-inspiring. The Go players' expressions were serious and their thinking time was extremely short. It could be seen that their Go skills were quite high. Yan Luyun knew a little about Go. Seeing these people play Go, his expression could not help but change. He said in a low voice, "Any one of these people would be an expert among experts. I wonder where Manager Ji went to find so many experts?" Tang Zheng looked deeply at Ji Wuxiang. Go players could not be recruited with money. The difficulty of recruiting so many experts was not something an outsider could imagine. Ji Wuxiang calmly said, "Young Master Yan is too serious. Young Master Tang, if you are interested, why don't we play a game?" Tang Zheng shook his head, "I don't know. That's a pity. Actually, I feel that Go skills are the same as martial arts. There are many profound principles within. The ancients said that the world is a Go game and we are all Go pieces. The world is actually playing a very big Go game. If you can comprehend the various profound principles of this Go game, it will definitely be very beneficial. You might even be able to play this huge Go game. Ji Wuxiang said tirelessly. Tang Zheng's eyes trembled as he said, "The world is a Go game. Manager Ji's ambitions are great. Could it be that you also want to play this Go game?" Ji Wuxiang laughed. "I am just a person without the strength to truss a chicken. How could I dare to have such extravagant hopes? I just feel that young Master Tang is a dragon among men. You will definitely have the opportunity to comprehend this Go game and play this Go game." Tang Jing chuckled. "Manager Ji thinks too highly of me. Who doesn't know of Manager Ji's huge power? The matter that no one in the capital can settle is a piece of cake in front of Manager Ji. It's just a piece of cake. How could I dare to be mentioned in the same breath as Manager Ji?" Tang Zheng could not understand the other's intentions and could not help but mutter in his heart. Young Master Tang is too modest. If young Master Tang had the opportunity to play this Go game, I wonder how you would play it? Ji Wuxiang persistently asked. Tang Zheng's eyebrows jumped as he said, "I don't know how to play Go, so I can't answer you. Play Go can be learned. Young Master Tang is smart, so you will naturally be able to learn it. I am not interested in learning for the time being. You will be interested in the future," Ji Wuxiang said in a profound manner. Yan Liuyun's expression became serious as he listened to the two's conversation. These words were too profound and he could not understand the meaning behind them. Could it be that the Go game was really that powerful? He casually picked up a Go piece from the Go board. Just as he was about to pick it up, his expression greatly changed. He stared at the Go piece in bewilderment and cried out in alarm, "This Go piece is so heavy." The Go piece was so heavy? Tang Zheng was confused as he pondered over what Ji Wuxiang was planning. Hearing Yan Liuyun's cry of alarm, he unconsciously looked at the Go piece in his hand. A Go piece was so small, so how heavy could it be? Yan Liuyun took a deep breath as if he was using all of his strength to pick up the Go piece. The veins on his arm bulged, making him look very strange. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. Yan Liuyun's appearance was definitely not fake. Could it be that this Go piece was really as heavy as 1,000 caddies? He casually grabbed the Go piece from Yan Liuyun's hand. Although he was mentally prepared, his arm suddenly sank as a strong force pressed down on his fingertips. He revolved his true qi and immediately counteracted this force. He let out a long breath and finally picked up the Go piece as if it was light. Yan Liuyun saw Tang Zheng's appearance and could not help but feel ashamed. He was a few years older than Tang Zheng, but their strength was so different. He actually had to struggle to pick up a Go piece. Then what was so strange about this Go piece? Tang Zheng also looked at the Go piece in his hand. It was a black Go piece, as black as ink. What material was this small Go piece made of to be so heavy? This was too unusual. His other hand immediately grabbed another Go piece on the Go board. Was the same. The other Go pieces were also as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Chapter 831. These Go players played with the Go pieces at their fingertips, lifting the heavy pieces as if they were light, but the Go pieces were as heavy as 1,000 caddies. This showed that none of them were ordinary people. Tang Zheng examined these Go players again, but found that there was neither the fluctuation of inner energy of a martial artist nor the flow of jinqi of a cultivator in their bodies, so how could they pick up the Go pieces? Tang Zheng was puzzled and could not hide his surprise as he looked at Ji Wuxiang. Seeing that he was so calm, he could not help but be shocked. Where did this person come from? So Tang Zheng asked tentatively, "Director Ji, what are these Go pieces made of? How could they be so heavy? And where are these Go players from? How could they lift the heavy pieces as if they were light?" Yan Liuyun had already put down his chess piece, and stared at Ji Wuxiang with a burning gaze. The world had always said that Ji Wuxiang was extraordinary, and now that he had clearly felt this point, he felt that he was even more unfathomable. He naturally wanted to know the answer to this. Ji Wuxiang glanced at the Go players and smiled faintly. "I don't know what these Go pieces are made of, but I'm not sure. These Go pieces are passed down from ancient times. I don't understand the things of our ancestors." "Is that so?" Tang Zheng did not believe it. With technology so advanced, there were many ways to test a material. He did not believe that Ji Wuxiang had not done the relevant tests. Ji Wuxiang smiled amiably. "If young Master Tang does not believe it, I can't do anything about it. This is the truth. As for these Go players, perhaps they are well versed in the art of Go, and their qi is compatible with the Go pieces, so they can pick up the Go pieces as if they are nothing. Tang Jing frowned and thought about Ji Wuxiang's words. Was this a lie, or did the so-called art of Go really exist? He thought for a long time but could not come to a conclusion, so he decided not to think about it. Ji Wuxiang smiled and said, "Gentlemen, this way please. Let's go to the pavilion over there to drink tea." After passing through the hall, the Go players still did not take a second look. It was as if the Go game in front of them was everything to them and had the greatest attraction. Yan Luyun looked back 3 times with every step he took. He was shocked, but he couldn't figure it out. He followed the two to the pavilion. A tea set had already been prepared in the pavilion. A beautiful woman dressed like an ancient court lady was brewing tea. After she finished brewing tea for the 3 of them, she left the pavilion. President Ji's tea reception is truly a waste of God's gift. To me, the art of chess is the same as the art of tea. I know nothing about them. Tang Jing said. Ji Wuxiang clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Young Master Tang, you're a man of true feelings. These tricks are only used to deceive the average person. You've already seen through the essence, so there's no need for these tricks to set you off." Hearing Ji Wuxiang praise him like this, Tang Jing felt a little embarrassed. His family was not well off when he was young, so how could he have the heart to learn these things? He was not like the children of a rich family who were proficient in the 4 arts. Seeing him talking about other things and not getting to the point, Tang Jing couldn't help but ask directly, "President Ji invited me here today. What is the purpose of this invitation?" "To watch the Go game and drink tea." "That simple?" Tang Jing did not believe it. Ji Wuxiang said with a smile, "Young Master Tang has been busy recently and has gained a lot. You've been busy all day, so naturally you need some peace and quiet. There's nothing special about this tea house other than peace and quiet. So, I took the initiative to invite young Master Tang to have some peace and quiet." Tang Jing looked at him meaningfully. His mouth twitched. Were you trying to fool? He felt more and more that Ji Wuxiang was unfathomable. So, he said without batting an eyelid, "Thank you President Ji for your kindness. I haven't thanked President Ji for his help last time at the club. It's just a small matter. I heard that Miss Tang Linger has been doing well recently and her path to stardom is broad. I really have to congratulate you. If I had such a sister, I would be very happy." Seeing him mention Linger, Tang Jing followed along and said, "Linger likes these things. I will naturally do my best to satisfy her." "Then Miss Tang Linger is really happy." Ji Wuxiang paused for a moment and then changed the topic. "Tang Jing is like the sun in the sky. If I may ask, what plans do you have for the future?" Tang Jing shook his head and said, "What plans can I have? I'll just live a simple life." "Hehe, young Master Tang must be joking. You can do whatever you want. How can that be considered a simple life? Presumably, the capital and even the country will be in the palm of young Master Tang's hand." Tang Jing's head bulged and he became vigilant. These words were a bit disgraceful. Chief Ji's words are exaggerated. This is my sincere truth. A man's pursuit is nothing more than power. With young Master Tang's strength, this power is not suitable. Tang Jing's eyes became sharp as he stared at Ji Wuxiang and said, "I am a law-abiding citizen. How can I do things that violate the law? Chief Ji's power is great, so of course you are not afraid of these rumors." "I am afraid." Tang Jing had not easily dispelled the government's fear of him, so he would not let others speak of him. As for why Ji Wuxiang mentioned these words, he really could not figure it out. In this world, only those with ability can live. Young Master Tang is young and full of vigor. Could it be that you do not envy the ancient emperors? Ji Wuxiang patiently said. "I don't want to. This is a new era, not ancient times. It is better to speak less of such nonsense. If Chief Ji does not have any other matters, then we will take our leave." Tang Jing had already sensed a sense of crisis. This Ji Wuxiang seemed harmless, but he was like a poisonous snake. He actually used such a disgraceful thing to seduce him. If he fell for it, then he was afraid that what awaited him would not be good. Moreover, he had never thought of becoming a king in his heart. He just wanted to live a peaceful life and at the same time increase his strength to protect the people around him. Seeing Tang Jing stand up, Ji Wuxiang laughed and said, "Young Master Tang, please don't blame me." This Ji spoke without thinking. "Please sit, please sit." Tang Jing and Yan Luyun looked at each other and Yan Luyun nodded. Tang Jing did not understand Ji Wuxiang's purpose, so he sat down again. With young Master Tang's strength, if you don't use it, then wouldn't it be a waste? Ji Wuxiang waited for them to sit down and said sincerely and regretfully. Tang Jing's face sank and said, "There's no need for Boss Ji to worry about this." Ji Wuxiang faintly smiled and said, "Young Master Tang, I heard that there's a white-clothed woman called Fu Yao in your residence. I wonder if I have the honor to introduce her to you? I've admired her for a long time and would like to meet her. Fu Yao? Tang Jing was slightly shocked. Could this be his true purpose? To meet Fu Yao? But Fu Yao was a complete stranger to him, so why did he want to meet her? Could it be that the news of the Empyrean fairy killing the sword god had reached his ears? Tang Jing did not change his expression and tactfully declined. Fu Yao is willing to meet a stranger. Ji Wuxiang faintly sighed and said, "That's a pity. The Fu family is the most ancient family name in Huaxia. It is said that they are the descendants of Fuxi. If this Miss Fu Yao is from this family, then she would have a long history." Boss Ji is experienced and knowledgeable. As for Fu Yao's family inheritance, I don't know. Tang Jing still did not agree. Is that so? I thought young Master Tang would know. After all, she lives in your residence. But I heard that a few thousand years ago, there was a woman called Fu Yao who shares the same name as your family. It's fate. Tang Jing was shocked. What did Ji Wuxiang mean? Could it be that he already knew Fu Yao's origins? No. He had never told anyone about Fu Yao's origins. He had never even mentioned the name of the Empyrean fairy, so how could Ji Wuxiang know? Was all of this a coincidence, an unintentional remark, or was he deliberately doing it? Tang Zheng could not see through Ji Wuxiang anymore. Ji Wuxiang continued, "Young Master Tang, are you listening to me?" Tang Zheng was slightly startled and said, "Of course I'm listening. There are too many people with the same name in this world. It's not surprising. Perhaps. But this Fu Yao in history is not simple. Although she is not in the official history, she has left behind many legends. Some say that Fu Yao played a part in Qin Shi Huang unifying the world. In addition, she also has a very impressive name, the Empyrean Fairy." Hearing the name Empyrean Fairy, Tang Zheng's heart almost jumped out of his throat, but he still pretended to be calm and did not reveal any flaws. He faintly said, "This Fu Yao is so formidable, but there is no trace of her in the official history. That's strange. Boss Ji is experienced and knowledgeable to even know about matters from several thousand years ago. Formidable." Ji Wuxiang looked at Tang Zheng with a smile that was not a smile and said, "History is written by the victors." Qin Shi Huang naturally did not want the world to think that there was a woman on his path to becoming a king. If the world knew that he was able to ascend the throne because of a woman, how would the world view him? After all, women in ancient times were not valued and thought that a woman without talent was virtuous. Tang Jing scoffed. If he had not been to Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, he would have believed these words. But he had seen Qin Shi Huang and the Empyrean Fairy, so he naturally would not believe it. He was afraid that there was a hidden story. The Empyrean Fairy and he had known each other for so long, but she rarely talked about her past. Even when he beat around the bush, she remained silent. That's a pity. This kind of talented woman was buried in history. Tang Jing pretended to sigh with regret. If I could see this person again, then I would have no regrets in this life." Ji Wuxiang looked deeply at him and sighed. "Several thousand years have already passed. This person has already passed away. How could I see her again?" Tang Jing said. That's not necessarily true. Who knows, maybe a miracle will happen." Ji Wuxiang said. Tang Zheng's heart beat wildly. What was the meaning of Ji Wuxiang's words? Did he really know Fu Yao's identity? Was this all a test, or did he already have concrete evidence? In addition, where did he get this information from? After all, it had already passed 1,000 years ago and it had not been passed down in the official history. There were too many secrets that no one knew about. But one thing was certain. Ji Wuxiang beating around the bush and beating around the bush, his ultimate goal was the Empyrean Fairy, Fu Yao. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.